That's the best I could come up with this morning, considering that I had the opportunity to and then declined to play Pink Floyd to start the show yesterday because Wish You Were Here was taken into outer space. But I thought yesterday, in light of all of the talk around a political shift and changes to our regional government yesterday, I played the Flintstones theme song and talked about the grand poobah position here. So today I went back to Pink Floyd, not because it's got any significance in this day in music history, but because the Wall himself, as in Joseph, helped us. Yes, us. Because even if you claim to not be a Leafs fan, you know that you're a Leafs fan, aren't you? And we won last night in overtime, 2-1, thanks in no small part. In fact, thanks almost entirely to Joseph Wall in goal for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So while I cannot play for you a little AM on AM in the AM, Austin Matthews on AM radio in the AM part of the day, we can play Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd, because it was the Wall, Joseph, who got us through that game last night, picked up a much-needed win, and I know I'm not alone because Annette, official Farwell's Force member number 222, sends me an email to Mike at 570news.com. Mike, I have only one comment to make this morning. The drought is over, and it's about dang time, if I must say so myself. Go Leafs. Keep the wins coming. Annette, thank you for being an official member of Farwell's Force, number 222. A force for good, a force for change, a force to be reckoned with. And thank you for your enthusiasm and optimism around our Toronto Maple Leafs. I love it. I'm here for it. I'm with you all the way. We got the monkey off our backs. It starts with one. Let's go, you Leafs. Let's go. I received another great email from Mike yesterday, which I'll share with you in just a moment. But remember, the minute we begin this show every day, our phone lines are open so we can interact with you. This is the most interactive show anywhere in the region. And heck, I'm always around. I might be watching the game, checking my phone, send emails, Mike at 570news.com, or find me on X at Farwell_WR. Let's get to the phones right now because Doug has called in early today. Find out what's on his mind. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Michael.
How are you, Douglas?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, it was a big night for Toronto. The Leafs won, the Raptors hit 9 in a row, and the Blue Jays signed Dylan Cease for 7 years.
How about it, eh? So all we need for the Leafs to do is realize that Toronto sports has changed, right? We've got a Game 7 World Series team in the Blue Jays. We've got the Raptors that are playing lights out. Let's go, you Leafs, go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I got to say, I'm a little disappointed in how some people have gone off the deep end about the problems they've been having. For heaven's sake, they were missing three of their top players and their top goaltender. You know, and the fact that Joseph Wall has stepped in where he should be in the first place, I'm very happy about. You're going to talk about weird ways to get hurt?
Yes, we're going to do. But Doug, you're skipping ahead on me here. What are you doing? Listen. There are rules to this show. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead. What do you got for me?
Well, I wouldn't be doing it if it hadn't happened this morning. I am on the road, but I have a very sore paw this morning. I grabbed my coffee cup off the counter in my travel mug before I guess my wife had forgotten to tighten the lid on it. So a huge fountain of coffee spilled all over my left hand and all over the floor. So I'm driving with one hand and keeping the second one kind of gingy right now. But I can't believe I can't believe that happened. I should have seen that the darn lid wasn't on.
Maybe Patty did it to you on purpose. She wanted you to stay home for a snow day.
Oh, I don't. Well, yeah. She works from home anyway, so I wouldn't be worried. Anyway, I thought I'd fill that in before because I'm on the road driving here, and anyway, so Force member 212 logging off, and thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Doug. Great to hear from you. Farwell's Force member number 212. The weird injury that he suffered the lid wasn't on the travel mug. He scalded his hand. This is the thing. I just got a doozy of a story from my coworker, Christine Clark, who does All News Mornings with Mark Douglas. I'll share it at the appropriate time. Listen, I'll let you jump the queue if you want to, like Doug just did. But on the flip side, this morning at 11:30, something we do every Thursday morning for a little bit of fun, we'll talk about those weird ways we injured ourselves. So Doug's got a sore paw today because he scalded it with the hot coffee, not realizing that the lid to his travel mug was a jar. I mean, the lid wasn't a jar, but it was, you know what I mean? The lid was loose. That other email I mentioned to you, sent to me yesterday by Mike. And Mike makes a great point because I've been sharing with you the opportunity that you have to win some big money and support Family and Children's Services of Waterloo Region at the same time. And that, of course, is through our annual 570 News Radio Tree of Hope 50/50 raffle in support of Family and Children's Services Foundation. All you have to do is go to facs5050.com and buy a ticket. It starts as little as $10. And when I mentioned that yesterday, Mike sent an email saying, listen, first thing I want you to know is I listen to your show every day from 7 a.m. till 3 p.m. Mikey, I love you for that. Sounds like a familiar shift. I used to work those weekends over at B&W Heat Treating, you betcha. And you should tell people that when they get that $10 ticket for the Family and Children's Services 50/50 raffle, it's 5 numbers for a chance to win, not just one. That's very true, Mike, and thank you for clarifying that. I should let you know. You're not just getting one ticket. Your minimum entry is $10. You spend $10, you're getting 5 numbers, 5 chances to win that $50,000 minimum jackpot. I know it's going to go higher by the time we make the final draw, but there's a minimum in there of $50,000. And if you buy now, like today, or even right this second at facs5050.com, you'll be eligible for our early bird prize, which will be drawn tomorrow morning, Friday at 8. Couple of tickets to see the Jonas Brothers in Hamilton on December the 14th and $1,000 in cash, just like that. And if you win the early bird, you're still in for the overall jackpot. So good job by Mike. $10 is what you can start at for tickets. You can spend more. Family and Children's Services would certainly appreciate it because when it's a 50/50 raffle, you win $50,000 or more, and the Family and Children's Services Foundation gets $50,000 or more. $10, you get 5 sets of numbers, and it just goes up from there. So consider that. Get in for the next early bird, which will be drawn tomorrow morning, facs5050.com. And Mike, I appreciate you for making sure that I get the information out there accurately and appropriately. On that note, accurately, appropriately, and sticking with the theme of money, let me just share this little tidbit with you that came from my morning papers, and it's around Black Friday, which we know is this Friday, followed by Cyber Monday. And even though this is an American holiday, I love me some American Thanksgiving. I know I've said that before, but let me just say it again. I love me some American Thanksgiving. They do Thanksgiving right. They make it a whole ding-dang 4-day weekend. They get the Macy's parade, all of this great stuff. And the shopping, well, if that's your sort of thing, after the Thursday holiday, you go shopping on Friday, get that Christmas shopping started in earnest. According to the Business Development Bank of Canada, we here in this part of the world, in Canada, are going to spend about the same as we spent last year on Christmas. $943 on average will be our outlay financially for Christmas. And about 60% of that, according to the Business Development Bank of Canada, will be spent on domestic, aka Canadian goods. Because, you know, we're all elbows up these days and doing our Canadian thing. You know me. I am a huge supporter of shop local, keep it local. And so I'm behind this 100%. However, the Business Development Bank of Canada says, listen, if we spend that $943 on Christmas this year, 60% of it being spent domestically on Canadian goods, that is going to account for about an $11 billion increase to Canada's GDP. But if we were to spend just $100 more So take that 60% spent domestically, and we'll just use easy numbers here, and up it to 70%, right? So instead of spending about $600 on Canadian stuff, we spend $700 on Canadian stuff. All of a sudden, we're talking $13 billion on impact to our GDP here in Canada. So we can increase that GDP by $2 billion, from 11 to 13 billion, if we spend closer to 70% of our Christmas money this year domestically. Again, I'm all about shop local, keep it here at home. And since we're going to do that anyway, why don't we do that a little more and take that GDP impact from 11 to $13 billion? Just an idea for you as you start the Christmas shopping in earnest. All right, let's get to your Farwell Show 5 for this Thursday morning, the 27th of November. And yes, Thanksgiving Day in the United States. So to all of our friends in Buffalo and Cleveland and all of my other favorite American cities, gosh darn it. Des Moines, you get a happy Thanksgiving as well. Number 1 on your Farwell Show 5. So far, so good with the storm we've been warned about. But as the winds pick up, blowing snow and snow squalls remain in our forecast, we could get up to 30 centimeters of snow by the time it's all done on Saturday. Meantime, the Weather Network's seasonal forecast is warning us of a December to remember. The network says we're going to get a colder December and January than we've felt in recent years, along with plenty of snow. Number 2, the Waterloo Regional Police budget was under the microscope at Regional Council, especially the proposal for a new communications center. Councillors wondered if we could scale back the $173 million project, something Regional Police Chief Mark Crowell advised against.
Disaster relief capability, the square footage cost is considerable, but it's built to not fail. So I would characterize that we can afford not to pay for it. And I would say to this council and largely to our community that I feel we take for granted the infrastructure that we require to be prepared for disaster and emergency.
Number 3 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, some new job opportunities coming to Waterloo in the form of some much-needed industrial space in the north end of the city. Shovels are now in the ground for the new Waterloo North Business Park on Northfield Drive by University. It's set to be ready for move-in at the end of next year. Number 4, the federal and Alberta governments expected to announce today an agreement that could pave the way for a new oil pipeline in exchange for stronger environmental regulations. Prime Minister Mark Carney says this memorandum of understanding to be signed today is about more than oil.
It is about much more than one thing, and fundamentally, it's about building this economy. It's about making Canada more independent, and it's about making Canada more sustainable.
Standing in the way of a pipeline project to the west coast is the oil tanker ban in northern BC waters, something that the government of British Columbia wants to keep in place. And meanwhile, the president of the coastal First Nations in British Columbia has vowed that an oil pipeline to the province's north coast will never happen. Do not, though, underestimate the big, hairy deal that is this memorandum of understanding to be signed today. And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this Thursday morning, just days after we learned that the Intercounty Baseball League was turning pro and becoming the Canadian Baseball League, we've now learned that the Guelph Royals are up for sale. Current owner Sean Fuller says, and I quote, "Owning the Guelph Royals has been an incredible honor. This club has history, heart, and a loyal following. It's time to find the next person to carry that legacy forward." Prospective buyers are invited to express their interest directly to Kitchener Panthers co-owner David Schooley. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Thursday morning. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm only connecting the dots here. But after I connected them, the conclusion I have arrived at is I think we're killing the Beavers in Kitchener. Hey, Beavers, watch out, because I think there's like a most wanted poster up for you. And we're not We're not messing around. I think we're killing the beavers in Kitchener. I'll tell you the story coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I hate to be the bearer of bad news because I know for certain that there are many who truly give a damn, pun intended, about beavers, you see. But I think, this is just me connecting the dots. I will present to you the facts as I understand them, and then you can draw your own conclusion about what happened to the beavers. But I think we killed the beavers in Kitchener. Okay, that's my takeaway from this story by my buddy Bill Doucette in the Waterloo Region Record today. So there was, past tense, was a beaver dam that had been built in Shoemaker Creek. Now, you know these beavers, right? They are an industrious animal, and they build this dam in Shoemaker Creek in Kitchener. That's the Sterling and Cortland Mill area in and around there. The problem, you see, with the dam in this particular creek is that it increases the risk of flooding in an already flood-prone area of the city of Kitchener. And really, we have bodies of water, shall we say, that are stormwater retention ponds and the like, which are essentially meant to mitigate flooding and a whole bunch of other things. And, well, again, if you'll forgive the turn of phrase, the beavers don't give a damn. They've just got a place they can build a dam, right? They get their water source and they start finding their wood and they build themselves a dam. So there had been a dam in Shoemaker Creek. And when it disappeared, some concerns were raised, which led to an email from the executive director of an organization known as the Fur Bearers, which wanted to find out from Kitchener Council, well, what happened to the beavers? Because don't you know, there are ways that we can deal with beavers that are non-lethal, not to put too fine a point on it. So they can be trapped, they can be killed, or they can be somewhat more humanely relocated. What we have learned following the Fur Bearers inquiry to council in Kitchener is that there were attempts on the part of the city to further deter development of the dam through what's described as regular disturbance, which the city of Kitchener said is often encouraged as an industry-accepted best management practice for beaver mitigation. The hope was that the beavers would move on to a more suitable habitat on their own. However, in this case, the city of Kitchener says, deterrence efforts were not successful, and we have recently engaged with a wildlife control agent licensed through the Ministry of Natural Resources to help manage the impacts in the area. A wildlife control agent licensed through the Ministry of Natural Resources to help manage the impacts in the area. As I pointed out, leaving the creek dammed would have increased flooding risks in an already flood-prone area and also would have restricted passage for the poor fish. Won't anybody think of the fish in this case? So, again, the Fur Bearers, as you can tell by their name, would obviously be in support of, somebody's got to stand up for the beaver here, right? And I'm not talking about June and Ward Cleaver or his brother, Wally. I'm talking about the beavers that were in Shoemaker Creek, had built a dam, and the Fur Bearers are saying there are better ways, there are humane ways to deal with these things. But the way I read this, recently engaging with a wildlife control agent, sounds to me licensed through the Ministry of Natural Resources. It sounds to me like you got the old 007 in there from the Ministry of Natural Resources, a license to kill. I think the beavers be damned is what I think. And listen, these are beyond an urban nuisance, right? What are you supposed to do when the beavers are damming up a creek that is helping you mitigate floods in a flood-prone area? It's either the flood for that part of the city or it's the beaver. Take your pick. And I think the city of Kitchener made its choice clear in all of this. Let's keep on the theme just a little bit, if we can, of wildlife, okay? Because today just so happens to be American Thanksgiving. And that makes today the anniversary of the great WKRP turkey drop. If you are unaware, I know it doesn't fall on the exact day. It was November the 22nd, 1979. But the idea is the same. On the Thanksgiving day, the great radio station WKRP in Cincinnati decided that they would give their listeners, the fine residents of Cincinnati, a free turkey for Thanksgiving.
And I think I hear something now. The crowd is moving out into the parking area. And, oh yes, I can see it now. It's a helicopter. And it's coming this way. The copter seems to be circling the parking area now. I guess it's looking for a place to land. No, something just came out of the back of the helicopter. It's a dark object. Perhaps a skydiver plummeting to the earth from only 2,000 feet into the air. Second to the third. There's no parachutes yet. Those can't be skydivers. I can't tell just yet what they are, but... Oh, my God, they're turkeys! Oh, Johnny, can you get this? Oh, they're crashing to the earth right in front of our eyes. One just went through the windshield of a parked car. Johnny, this is terrible. The cars running around, pushing each other. Oh, my goodness. Oh, the humanity. Oh, people are running about. The turkeys are hitting the ground like sacks of wet cement.
Thanks for that on-the-spot report, lads. For those of you who just tuned in, the Pinedale Shopping Mall has just been bombed with live turkey. Film at 11.
As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly.
I'll tell you what, they're falling to the ground like sacks of wet cement. Oh, the humanity. But hang on a second. Hang on. Just 1 second. As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly. I've checked in with the head birder at the Cincinnati Zoo, because where else would you go? I don't care about a zoo around here. I want to know from Cincinnati, where they dropped the turkeys out of the helicopter more than 40 years ago. And Ricky Kinley, head birder at the Cincinnati Zoo, says, hang on a second. Yes, they can. Turkeys can, in fact, fly. They're not great flyers, but if a predator or a threat comes along, they can have a very strong burst of flight where they get off the ground and they can fly up into the trees or fly a short distance away. Of course, that doesn't answer the question of whether or not they use those little wings when they're being dropped from a helicopter circling over the Pinedale Mall. Happy Thanksgiving to our American friends. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. An update this morning on a story that we have shared with you before. The story is about a couple of condominium towers proposed for, I think it's I was going to say Uptown Waterloo. It's very close. It's just outside. You go past King and William there, where the old Labatt plant used to be if you're of a certain vintage. Anyway, it's where the Herb and Good Funeral Home currently exists on King Street South. And there are a couple of towers proposed for that site at 33 and 37 stories. Neighbors in the surrounding area have been with us on the show before, expressing their concerns about the height of these towers. And they have continued to work diligently behind the scenes in the weeks since we first brought you this story to make progress on their efforts to let Waterloo City Council know that this might not be the best fit for the neighborhood. So we'll update you on that progress this morning as we're joined by Amy Miller. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Pretty good.
Good. And Jamie Rodrigue is with us as well. Jamie, good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
So, Amy, if I could start with you, please. The work that you and your fellow residents nearby have been doing since we first talked about a month or so ago, what have you done to learn more about this project and why it might not be the best fit?
Well, I'm going to give kudos to Jamie on this because he's really taken the lead on this. But we're just wanting people to understand that this is a precedent-setting development in Waterloo. It's the amendment to the current bylaw. There are several. We're looking at 37 and 33 towers just on the urban good lot, which is a very small lot, I think, or a parcel, whatever you want to call it. I think Jamie can speak to the size difference. And we want people to realize that this is going to shape the city. And once this happens, then it leaves a door open that perhaps cannot be closed anymore. And that is our problem or our concern with this. The respect to the heritage building in relationship to the other buildings on that corner, the park. There's the Coombs house across the street. This is all part of our sort of argument that maybe this isn't the best idea because once this is done, we can't go back.
So, Jamie, when we look at this particular parcel of land and its size to basically become the foundation for 33 and 37-story towers, what have you learned in speaking with subject matter experts on the issue?
Well, what I've learned, Mike, is the city in their pre-consultation report with the developer, that pre-consultation took place about a year ago now. The city actually expressed similar concerns to what we're talking about, what Amy has alluded to. So the city in their pre-consultation report, they referenced the height of these towers. And they also talked about the density, which Van Mar is proposing to triple the density from 750 bedrooms per hectare, according to the bylaw, to 2,250 bedrooms per hectare. The city also mentioned cultural heritage. And the fact that according to city policies and provincial policies, cultural heritage is to be conserved and to remain in situ. So all of these things were brought up by the city, and the developer was challenged to justify why their proposal would be appropriate for this site. And we've gone through their justification report, and we find it very difficult to understand how this can be justified. It doesn't seem to be justified in our view.
Have you had any conversation, Jamie, with anybody at City Hall, your ward councillor, anybody on the planning staff since you began this process?
Yeah, so earlier this week we met with city planners that are working on this case, as well as Councillor Julie Wright, who is the ward councillor for this area. And we shared our concerns about scale, transition, heritage setting, site constraints. And the response we got back was, first of all, one of the planners, Wendy Fisher, had mentioned that she felt our report was quite strong, and she acknowledged and thanked us for having such a clear report. I mean, at the end of the day, this is still in the process of being decided upon. And so there are a lot of things that they can't comment on, including Councillor Julie Wright. But they did hear our concerns, I think, loud and clear. And they also said that tonight's public meeting, which the developer is hosting at 6:30 tonight at First United Church, they said that this is a good opportunity for us to give some feedback to the developer, which is really an important part of this process.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that meeting because I wanted to make people aware of it happening tonight. And as you just said, First United Church, which is right there on the corner of King and William, essentially next door to this proposed development. So 6:30 till 8 tonight. I hope folks check that out. Amy, when last we talked about this on the show, I had a call afterwards from one of our listeners who I thought made a pretty fair point. He said, listen, if we're going to intensify anywhere like this, it's in a place like this. You're right near the LRT. You're walking distance to retail, including a grocery store, etc. This is the very kind of place in our community we should be intensifying like this. How do you respond to that?
Well, I don't think we're against intensifying. What I think we're saying is that perhaps is not the appropriate place for the size, the scale of those two towers. There's, where the old, I'm just trying to think, by Waterloo Town Square, the Atrium, the Duke of Wellington, there's a whole parking lot there that seems to me would serve a better place for something that size. I think we're saying that two towers is just too much for the parcel of land. We've had city planners, I think Max Kerrigan was his name, suggested that one tower, it could support one tower, but two is just over intensification. And I think as far as we're concerned, irresponsible on some level.
So if it was a single tower as opposed to dual towers, would that be more acceptable to the surrounding neighborhood?
Yeah, like I said, we're not opposed to more housing. We're just opposed to smart housing in Uptown. And we want growth that actually aligns with the city's official plan, the OPA 58, and the Urban Design Manual, which you can all find on Engage Waterloo, and just good urban design practice. Jamie, do you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, and by comparison, Mike, I mentioned this last time I spoke to you. You've got Caroline and Park condos, which are just a stone's throw away. There are two towers on that site, and they are 22 and 19 stories. But that site is about 30% bigger than the site that we're talking about here, where the Urban Good Funeral Home is. So in terms of like the context, the surrounding context, this seems way out of scale. And I mean, according to the city's own policies and frameworks, it obviously is problematic because otherwise the developer wouldn't have to be asking for numerous amendments. Yeah.
So, Jamie, what would a good or acceptable outcome to this look like to you?
Well, as Amy mentioned, an acceptable or good outcome from our perspective, and when I say our perspective, I'm not just speaking for Amy and I. We've got over 150 residents that have signed a petition, and they're not just residents that live in tall towers. These are people that live in the neighborhoods and communities and the townhouses. So I think from our perspective, a single tower that is built within the city's own policies and frameworks. So, it's important that the project respects heritage, sunlight, transition, open space, and public realm quality. These are all things that are mentioned in those policies. So we would like to see the developer work within those policies. We understand, too, that there needs to be some give and take. We get that those are guidelines. But, what's being proposed here given the surrounding context is way beyond the scope of this area.
I appreciate the both of you. Oh, sorry, Amy, were you?
No, go ahead. I was just going to speak to like the livability of living uptown and the shade and the wind. And I always use the Bauer Kitchen, that breezeway, as an example of how windy that gets and what does it look like when it's 37 and 33 towers uptown. It's just, I think that's the important part, the livability of the city and what do we want as a city. There's great cities in Canada and throughout the world that have height requirements and those are respected in heritage. And just because it's bigger I think we think bigger is better. And I don't think that's the case all the time.
I appreciate the both of you for making time on the show this morning. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Jamie Rodrigue and Amy Miller joining us. They live right nearby the proposed towers. I've been hesitating using twin towers because that's got a whole other connotation, doesn't it? So I apologize for that. And then I just go and say it. But if you wondered why is Farwell hesitating around saying, finding a different way to say two of these towers? Anyway, this proposal on the former site, or what will become the former Urban Good Funeral Home. I mentioned that to you yesterday. Urban Good relocating to Victoria Street in Kitchener, where the Home Hardware used to be. I brought that up yesterday because, and I'll just remind you now quickly, the Boy Scouts who for many, many years have sold Christmas trees out of that lot at the Victoria Street Home Hardware, they are now selling their Christmas trees out of the lot at Concordia Club in Kitchener. So you want to do that tradition of buying your Christmas tree from the Boy Scouts, find them at Concordia Club this year. That's where Urban Good will relocate to Victoria Street, where the Home Hardware used to be. It's now closed and work is beginning on that site. And where Urban Good is now, there are proposed to be 2 condominium towers of 33 and 37 stories. They will house collectively, when complete, over 1,400 people. There are a number of planning regulations that would have to be tweaked in order to allow for this kind of height and this kind of density in this part of Waterloo. And so council has a decision to make here. I think it's fair to acknowledge Amy's point that this will then become precedent setting, right? Because once you tweak the regulations to allow this, you are allowing more of the same, or maybe even the next tweak to what you've done here, right? So I totally get that. And I can understand if I were living in the neighborhood, thinking of the impacts that such a development would have on my neighborhood. Not only will they tower, pun intended, over everything else because they are that tall, 33 and 37 stories, but it absolutely changes what parts of the community or the neighborhood get sunlight, where the wind starts to whip up, as Amy talked about. There are absolutely impacts that way. And then there's the other side of the equation, and I think it's two-pronged on the other side. One is we know that we need housing, and we need housing rather desperately. And I'll take it back to a call we got when last we talked about this, and I remember it vividly. It was Dylan who made the call and said, listen, this is exactly the place where development like this should be happening. You're basically on the cusp of the uptown core. You've got LRT right nearby. You've got retail shopping right nearby, including a grocery store. You basically have everything that you want in a neighborhood like this. I might liken it to downtown Kitchener, which is an area that I have described as claustrophobic. To me, an old-timer in this community that didn't see those tall towers all over the ding-dang place when I was a kid. And now I feel a little bit claustrophobic. But there are lots of people who enjoy an environment like that, where they can go into their condominium apartment, close the door, and then when they want to come out, they're walking to this place or that place. Hop on the LRT, go to the grocery store. There's an LCBO right nearby. I could just keep listing them off. There are people that enjoy that kind of urban environment. So how do you square this circle? How do you view this particular proposal? Is it too tall and too tight for this particular parcel of land? Or is this just the kind of thing we need in just the kind of place we need it? Your thoughts always welcome on the Mike Farwell Show. Phone lines are open to you. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Cultural heritage is to be conserved and to remain in situ. So all of these things were brought up by the city, and the developer was challenged to justify why their proposal would be appropriate for this site. And we've gone through their justification report, and we find it very difficult to understand how this can be justified. It doesn't seem to be justified in our view.
Jamie Rodrigue, who, along with his neighbor Amy Miller, joined the show moments ago to talk about a proposed condominium tower development in Uptown Waterloo. I'm calling it Uptown. I think some who are pickier would call it Midtown, but it's where the Urban Good Funeral Home currently sits on King Street South, not far from William, just on the cusp of what I think we would call Uptown, starting at William and probably going to Bridgeport or so. Anyway, whether you call it Midtown or you call it Uptown, these proposed towers would be taller than any others currently in the area at 33 and 37 stories high. And it would also bring a greater intensity than the City of Waterloo's regulations currently allow. So those regulations would have to be tweaked to allow for that height and that number of bedrooms, if you will, per square foot or square meter of space. It's understandable that one can be frustrated by all of the impacts this is having on your existing neighborhood. And then, of course, on the other side of that occasion, there is an incredible need for housing. And as has been said on this show before, there is no better area than an uptown, downtown core area to start building like this. I think the point also, like, look, again, I'm going to make the comparison to downtown Kitchener, a place that I spent so much of my life in. Heck, our station used to be right in the heart of downtown Kitchener. And as a kid, I was down there all the time. And it is dramatically different all of these years later than it was then. And I do feel kind of claustrophobic, closed in by all of those tall towers. Believe it or not, if you're just looking at it from a data perspective, Waterloo is the tallest among the cities. More high rises in Waterloo than anywhere else. And the other thing to consider here, when we look at condominium towers like this, as nice as it is to talk about the housing that it creates, we know really what kind of housing it creates, right? It creates investment housing. People are going to buy those units and then rent them out to students or to others who are looking for a rental. That is typically what happens, and most of these units will be one-bedroom units. There will be some two-bedroom units in the overall proposal as well, but most of them will be one-bedrooms. So somebody with means will buy the unit outright and then rent it to somebody else who is in the rental market. So I don't think we should ever overlook that aspect of it when we talk about this as being one of the solutions to our housing crisis. Let's go to the phones and hear from Sean. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning. You know, I was looking at the site of where the Urban Good funeral home is. And if you look at it like from a satellite view, which I'm looking at right now, I mean, there is a building across the street. There's Chartwell Terrace. There's townhomes. Ion is right there. You know, like it's already a fairly built-up area, and there's already two buildings between Caroline and Park Street. So I'm really not seeing a huge objection to why these buildings should be there, in all honesty. I mean, the nearest established neighborhoods are like Mary, Allen Street, which are some distance away from that site. So I really don't know what the problem is.
Well, I guess the problem is for those who are in the immediate vicinity. So while you're looking at a satellite view, there are others who will literally be looking up at this from their front yards. But I hear you. And I think it's a fair point, as was made before when we talked about this on the show. If you're not going to put buildings like this here, where are you putting? Maybe you're not putting any buildings like this. But again, if you want to talk about the city that's grown up the most, that would be the city of Waterloo. Public meeting tonight at First United Church, corner of King and William, basically right next door to this proposed development. And the developers will be there to answer questions, and I hope it brings some fruitful discussion. 6:30 until 8 tonight at First United Church. A quick break, an update from the 570 News Center, and then what does aging well really mean? A conference in Waterloo tomorrow will explore that idea, and we'll talk about it on the show next. It's the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Trading at Schwab is now powered by Ameritrade, giving you even more specialized support than ever before. Like access to the trade desk, our team of passionate traders ready to tackle anything from the most complex trading questions to a simple strategy gut check. Need assistance? No problem. Get 24/7 professional answers and live help, and access support by phone, email, and in-platform chat. That's how Schwab is here for you, to help you trade brilliantly. Learn more at schwab.com/trading.
There is A free, and you know that's my favorite four-letter word that starts with F. Free, F-R-E-E, free. Public panel discussion happening tomorrow at the Rec Complex in Waterloo, the new community pavilion, to be exact. It starts at 9:30, runs through until noon, and it will allow us the opportunity to hear from a panel of experts talking about aging well in place and how we can age well. What does that even mean, to put as fine a point on it as we can? And of course, not only aging well, but then aging in place. One of those panelists who will be a part of this conversation tomorrow joins us now, Laura Giangregorio, who is a Canada Research Chair in Bone Health and Exercise Science. Laura, good morning.
Thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
It's a pleasure, and I really appreciate you making the time, not only for the show today, but for this panel tomorrow, because it certainly is an important conversation. And why is a public discussion like this important, Laura?
Well, we know that Canada's population over the age of 65 is going to grow by 68% in the next 20 years. So just to put that in context locally, that means 1 in 4 people locally will be over the age of 65 by 2041. So we need to develop strategies to help people stay safe, healthy, and active in their communities as they age.
And speaking of staying active in their communities, I'm sure that ties into the work that you do as a research chair in bone health and exercise science. What do we know, or what are we learning about the benefits of exercise, maybe even strength training for older adults?
Yeah, we're actually doing strength training research looking at the effects of exercise on bone mineral density in people with low bone mass. What we know is I actually worked with Osteoporosis Canada on clinical practice guidelines a few years ago, and we know that there's very high certainty evidence that if you're doing challenging balance exercises and functional strength training exercises, that we can prevent falls. And falls are the leading cause of hospitalizations in older adults. So, incorporating this type of exercise can really prevent injuries. And we know that falls often lead to fractures, which is often, one thing that might prevent someone from potentially being able to continue to live independently. So we want to make sure that, we're incorporating strength training to prevent muscle loss and bone loss, and balance training to prevent falls as we age. And I would actually argue that all adults should do this so that we develop good habits and prevent these changes as we get older.
I love the use of the word prevent there, Laura. I've talked about this often. You can imagine on a show like this, the healthcare system generally comes up, and I like to refer to it as a sick care system. I think it's great that it's there to take care of us when we arrive in it, and we all will at some time or another. But the more we can do on the prevention side, the better. So if we're looking at this, exercise-based prevention techniques to avoid those falls, those other injuries, what might that exercise look like?
That's a great question. And we want to make sure that we're incorporating. So the Canadian 24-hour movement guidelines recommend several types of exercise. And I think that they'll have lots of health benefits, because sometimes falls occur because of changes in blood pressure or other things that are happening. So we want to do that cardiovascular exercise to keep our heart and our lungs strong and our brain strong. So we also sometimes have falls because of cognitive changes. So, that's really important. We want to do resistance training to prevent muscle and bone loss, and balance training to kind of make sure that we can react quickly if we are destabilized. For example, you're walking your dog and they pull funny and you stumble, right? So we want to do a variety of different types of exercise, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about at the community conversation, which is the event that we're holding. So there'll be experts on medication management, fall prevention, nutrition support, and myself, physical activity. But we do want to do a variety of types of exercise to prevent the changes that happen with aging.
My dog did that to me last night, Laura, and I said to her, you want to pull my arm right on my socket? And she saw a squirrel, you see, and she gets pretty excited. But and sometimes it just means you'll take a couple steps and right yourself. But some people,
maybe their balance is a bit more impaired and they take a step and then fall, right? So doing exercises where you're challenging yourself to react, where you're it feels like it's a little, you have to concentrate to hold your balance or concentrate to react, but that's exactly what you want to do to kind of challenge yourself to prevent those changes that occur with balance.
Absolutely.
With aging.
And so here's the thing. We might think of a fall, for example, as a very individual thing, right? I have fallen and I did, cause this injury or cause that injury, but there's a multiplication factor at play here with older adults, generally the number of falls, et cetera, cumulatively here. So what do we know about the impacts on our healthcare system, the economic burden that is placed on it with the magnitude of falls that we're seeing?
Yeah, like I said, falls are the most common cause of hospitalization, and they can cause things like head injuries. They can cause fractures, both the arm. The hip fracture is probably the most devastating occurrence, and in fact, they're more common. They're more common in women. We do know, we think of osteoporosis as a woman's disease, but men actually get osteoporosis as well and have hip fractures, and men are more likely to die as a result of a hip fracture. So we want to make sure that we have adequate nutrition to prevent the muscle loss that can sometimes cause us to lose strength and fall more often. We want to manage our medications well. We want to make sure that we manage our blood pressure and do things to prevent falls, because you have a hip fracture, and this might mean now that you can't walk as well and you can't manage your home as well, and it may be that tipping point that means you can't live independently, and that may mean you may have to go to, say, live in long-term care or other setting, which is then increasing costs, right?
I think it's a great point, and you again do a terrific job of highlighting the things that we will be hearing at this panel discussion tomorrow. And I guess ultimately what we're looking at here, Laura, is a series of prevention techniques that we can employ so that we can live independently for as long as possible, because I think there are myriad benefits to that.
Yeah, I agree. And we can take action in middle age. We can take action in older age. You start where you're at. So it's never too late to start incorporating some of these strategies. And many people, when they think of fall prevention, they think, oh, that's not going to happen to me. But the reality is these changes sometimes happen quite slowly. So we want to think about developing healthy habits when it comes to all aspects of, nutrition, fall prevention, medication management. And the nice thing about this is it's not a series of lectures. It's a panel of experts, and it's a conversation. So there's going to be a facilitator asking questions, and we'll also take audience questions. So it'll be great for, people to kind of participate in this sort of casual conversation with experts in the field.
Laura, I appreciate your time on the show today. Looking forward to the discussion tomorrow. Thank you very much for being here.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Laura Jean-Gregorio is a Canada Research Chair in Bone Health and Exercise Science. She will be one of 4 panelists at the Waterloo Community Pavilion tomorrow. By the way, I remember bringing this up after I attended, it was the Athlete of the Year awards there about a year ago now. Gosh, I haven't been back since. But if you haven't seen, this is part of the Waterloo Memorial Recreation Complex on Father David Bauer Drive. And this community pavilion, hell of a spot. So good job, Waterloo. And the pavilion will host this panel discussion tomorrow, which is absolutely free. Runs from 9:30 until noon. As you heard Laura talk about, a chance for some audience interaction there as well. And what they will be discussing or looking at, solutions around healthy aging, medication management, because we know how tough that can be, fall prevention, which we discussed here at some length with Laura this morning, as well as nutrition to support this shift in demographics. Let's not forget, in the next 20 years, our 65-plus population is going to grow by 68% here in the region. We will increase from 1 in 6 people today who are 65-plus to 1 in 4 people by 2041. So in the next 15 years or so. It's been described before as a rapidly aging population, but I heard one pundit suggest that we're not rapidly aging. We have rapidly aged. We are already there. We are a relatively old society here in Canada. So Let's have these conversations about maintaining our independence for as long as we can. And you know me, I am a big, big believer in that whole ounce of prevention idea. And I've said for a long time, when it comes to our healthcare system, which I do describe and will continue to describe as a sick care system, it's fantastic that it is there for us when we ultimately need it, and we all will. But if we invested a fraction, and maybe we do, I don't know what the actual numbers look like, but it seems to me we talk all the time about the investments or the lack of investment in our healthcare system today or our sick care system today. I wish we talked more about the inadequate investment in prevention, in things just like this, because the more we can get these messages out about maintaining our independence, about managing our medications, preventing falls, proper nutrition, etc., the less stress we're going to put on that sick care system. And I just want to mention, too, that this panel has been arranged and will be supported by our Institute for Aging at the University of Waterloo, which is probably an underappreciated asset in our community. But this Schlegel University of Waterloo Research Institute for Aging does some great work. And again, when you consider the size of this demographic, 65 plus today, and how much larger it's getting, you can understand the importance of such an institute right here in our own backyard and the opportunity for a panel discussion like this to be put together. So that's tomorrow from 9:30 until noon at the Waterloo Community Pavilion on Father David Bauer Drive. Glad we could get Laura Jean Gregorio here on the show today to tell us a little more about it and give some insight into one aspect of that panel discussion tomorrow. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, and I wonder about your thoughts on this, because it probably won't surprise you. I've got thoughts. It's been covered very well in our news cycle today. Our reporter, Justin Kohler, talking about it this morning. The police budget coming under the microscope at Regional Council yesterday. And specifically within that budget is the $173 million communications center. We've talked about the communications center itself on the show before, dedicating time to what it's all about, and we can get into that a little bit more. But you know me, there's never been two nickels I didn't want to rub together and hang on to for as long as I could. $173 million is a big ticket item. And the questions were asked, well, how do we justify $173 million for this communication center over here when we've got a housing crisis over there? Is there a paradox at work here? But in a general way, the question to you is, I'd be curious as to your thoughts on the price tag of $173 million. How do you feel about spending that kind of money on a communication center? I should call it probably more accurately an emergency communication center. $173 million. I've got some thoughts. I'll share them. And as always, I'd love to hear yours as well. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It was a story very well covered by our reporter Justin Kohler during All News Mornings this morning with Christine Clark and Mark Douglas. The story of the regional police budget broadly, and more specifically within that budget, the plan for a new emergency communications center. We've talked about this before, the communications center itself. Ultimately, and I think it would be fantastic if we got to the ultimate goal here, whereby all emergency responders in this region would partner in this new facility. So that would include, obviously, our paramedic services and I'm looking specifically at you right now, fire services, which seem to be more resistant to coming under the same roof as police. But we could have so much, I think, collaboration under that one roof if all of our emergency responders and their dispatch systems were in the same place. So come on with your coming on here, fire services around the region. I know there's 7 different fire services and 1 regional police and paramedic service, but there's room here. We're welcoming you into the communication center. And it goes beyond just dispatching and the collaboration that can happen within that communication center to get the right people to the emergency at the right time, right? That's important. Make no mistake about it. But we are also moving into, if we're not already into, a whole new world when it comes to the kinds of emergencies our community can face. So we can easily think in this community of flooding, which we've had on a grand scale before, no pun intended with the Grand River, but we have had tremendous flooding issues in this community in the past. Everybody's still going to remember the Great Blackout of 2003, and while it wasn't centered here, the emergency or the impact was obviously felt across a great part of the eastern seaboard, right? And we are into this new era of cyber crime, whereby, and we've seen school boards and municipalities having their essentially IT infrastructure held hostage. And just imagine how much more nefarious that can get as we put more and more things onto networks, right? Think about traffic signals and a whole bunch of other things that could be disrupted by somebody with nefarious intentions breaking into systems, right? So this kind of emergency communications center will be that point that is built in with redundancies so that we have the ability to fall back onto a backup system. Be prepared for all manner of emergency that exists today and likely will exist into the future. But the question was rightly asked about a $173 million project. How do we balance the request for $173 million for this communication center when we've got a housing crisis right now in our community? That was the question asked by Regional Councillor Chantal Hewenink, and this was the response from Regional Police Chief Mark Kroll.
To your direct question about having one communications project versus housing, in terms of priorities, every community would be facing the same. We have a national housing crisis, but we also have a growth crisis, I would characterize in this region when it comes to improving our infrastructure. And as I described earlier, our emergency communications infrastructure is out of date, largely for the facilities that we require today and for the decades to come. So what we could spend any amount of time diving into the design and the level of investment that we're moving ahead with. But I think it's a very complex and intricate conversation about the staging of the growth that we feel is required, the density of technology within that center, and the redundancies that are required are immense as well. So disaster relief capability, the square footage cost is considerable, but it's built to not fail. So I would characterize that we can't afford not to pay for it. And I would say to this council and largely to our community that I feel we take for granted the infrastructure that we require to be prepared for disaster and emergency and the lights that need to run every second of every day. So when it comes to housing versus this project, I think this is a comprehensive conversation that we need to have, but it's not lost on the competing priorities.
So here's my take, and I think that's a fair point to make, especially around taking for granted the emergency redundancies and abilities we have to respond to emergencies today. I think we do take that for granted. Here's the other thing, and I want to look at this strictly, needs versus wants, okay? $173 million, especially now, that's a spicy meatball, as they would say. Ask the city of Cambridge, though, how it went for them when they dithered and couldn't figure out what they wanted to do with their multiplex. And the cost, thanks to their dithering and delaying, doubled. More than, in fact, from 50-odd million to more than $100 million. Ask the city of Kitchener, which said more than 15 years ago, about 15 years ago now, we're not going to we're not going to build a new arena. We're going to renovate and expand the existing Kitchener Memorial Auditorium. And in 10 to 15 years, we're going to build a new one. Well, back then, we could have built a whole brand new one for $135 million, the whole shoot and match. Today, we're talking $400 million before we break a sweat. And ain't nobody nowhere going to spend that kind of money on a new arena and concert facility here. No, it's not going to happen. So those are nice to haves, I'll grant you. I would argue that a comms center, the likes of which we're talking about, and emergency redundancies is a need. If you don't spend it now, how much more is it going to cost you 5 years from now? And I think we have to seriously ask ourselves that question. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Let's call it almost 2,200 jobs and counting. That would be the number of jobs cut at Conestoga College. 2,180 so far. And as I said, now counting. There is a meeting happening at the school right now with an employment stability committee as they try to figure out what will be the ultimate fate of about 200 full-time faculty members. This is the time in the school calendar when department chairs at colleges across this province would issue what's called a standard workload form to their faculty so they can determine what their full-time course load looks like for the next semester. However, at Conestoga College, instead of a standard workload form, what many full-time faculty have received is an email that lets them know, quote, "Unfortunately, I do not have an assignment at this time, and as a result, I cannot provide you with a standard workload form for winter of 2026. Please note that the information provided should now be taken as the decided course of action," end quote. It appears as though there's a potential layoff of more than 200 more full-time faculty because there is nothing for them to teach in the winter semester. Vicky Poirier joins us on the show this morning. Vicky has full-time support staff who also this week received from Conestoga College a voluntary exit package. Vicky, represents support staff at Conestoga College. Vicky, thank you very much for making time. Good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that I am not the president for the support or for the faculty. That Leopold, I know, sits on that employment stability committee, and I'm sure he is deep in the so-called trenches. And I do want to acknowledge that I feel full-heartedly for that committee as someone who sat on a similar committee not 8 months ago and had to go through the process of what affected 191 of our support staff.
On that note, what does that process look like? And as a union president for support staff, what are you going through in those moments at those meetings?
So again, I can only comment on the process, how it lays out for support staff. And I do not want to make the assumption that it is similar for faculty. And I can only go on the notion that of my experience. And my experience during those meetings is that you are trying to save as many jobs as possible. And at times there's nowhere for people to go. It's a long process. There are many questions that have to be asked. Before you get to those roles that are being affected, it's asking where the decision came from. And now under our new collective agreement, we have language around further disclosure, financials and that. So it's hard. It's a rather subjective question, Mike, but I can tell you that the sleepless nights that the committee members, and I'm sure on both sides of the table, were difficult, and the outcome was even harder.
What can you tell us, Vicki, about that voluntary exit package that full-time support staff received from Conestoga College this week?
Well, I can tell you it went out to every single full-time support staff that is actively working. I know I also received that package notification. It's an offer of your completed service by weeks. So for one year, equaling 1 week. And then that is, with our new collective agreement, we have further language around severance, an enhanced severance of 1.5 on top of that. And then the college is including an additional 1.5.
I certainly don't want to diminish the impact, so please don't misunderstand, of these packages being received by support staff, the decisions that they face, the time of year. I could go on and on. It's a very difficult position to be in. But I wonder what this means through your lens, Vicki, to the student experience at Conestoga College with these layoffs just continuing or these voluntary exit packages being offered.
I'm extremely concerned. I'm extremely concerned about on both sides of the table for faculty as well as support staff packages and how they affect our students' experience, because that work will need to be done. Who is going to do that work?
Is all of this connected to the cap on foreign student enrollment and Conestoga College's previous appetite for attracting foreign students?
I would say partially. I'm hesitant to go beyond that. I look at the amount of properties that the college has purchased, and I, again, respectfully and respecting the work that the college has done in getting into the community and such, and broadening. I just do question some of the decisions, as rather of keeping some of that money in-house and into the workforce.
So what do things look like in the immediate future now for support staff having received these voluntary exit packages? What does your work look like in the days ahead?
As the president, or for our members? Well,
for the members, and then you said you received a package as well. I mean, what does this look like now?
So for all support staff, I'm sure it's caused panic. It's what if they don't take this package? What is the next step? And we don't know that. And I will say that before this call, I did send an email out to President Tibbetts, to the Board of Governors, and to a few other leaders at our college, requesting transparency and open communication to be provided to Conestoga College employees. And in that email, I have requested that there be a town hall, that there be a clear understanding and forthcoming of what is transpiring, especially from our president at the college.
Sorry, Vicki.
I'm calling on the leaders of the college to provide some information and direction of what is taking place. Over the last 2 weeks, there was the silent firings of administrative staff that caused upheaval and questions.
You have been at the college for a number of years. How would you compare the workplace today compared to the workplace of, say, 5 years ago?
The college is a machine now, whereas 5 years ago, I would say we were more of a community. I can't explain it any better.
I do appreciate you making time during a difficult time for this show this morning, Vicki. Thank you very much for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Vicky Poirier is the president of OPSU Local 238, representing support staff at Conestoga College. They, just this week, received from the college a voluntary exit package. If they do not take that voluntary package, what do things look like from here? There is a great deal of uncertainty at exactly the time of year you would wish for the exact opposite, right? Heading into the holiday season. But this is just a continuation of what began about a year ago at Conestoga College. Now we're at 2,200 almost and counting job losses, the standard workload form not being issued to some 200 plus faculty for the winter semester, essentially telling these full-time faculty that there's no course for them to teach. So we can't offer you any standard workload form because there's no workload, if you will. That's on the faculty side, and here on the support side, the voluntary exit package is offered just this week. And so the wheel continues to turn at Conestoga College, and it's like a merry-go-round where you get thrown off once it starts spinning so fast. And the job cuts have been deep. They've been massive at Conestoga College, and they continue. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
The Whiz Kids had won it, Bobby Thompson had done it, and Yogi read the comics all the while. Rock and roll was being born, marijuana we would scorn. So down on the corner the national pastime went on trial. We're talking baseball, Klazuski, Campanella, talking baseball. The man and Bobby Fella, the Scooter, the Barber and the Nuke. They knew them all from Boston to Dubuque, especially Willie, Mickey, and the Duke.
Well, that music can mean only one thing. We're talking baseball, but not just any old baseball. Blue Jays baseball. And when we do that, we talk about it with the one and only Blue Jay Hunter, who always on a moment's notice, it's like making a call to the bullpen. He's always there. Blue Jay Hunter, Ian Hunter, joins us on the show. Mr. Hunter, good morning.
Yes, good morning. Glad to be talking Blue Jays baseball for next year, not lamenting what happened in Game 7 of the World Series. So it's a nice change of pace for one.
It certainly is. But, you know, since you bring it up, I don't know about you, Ian, but I still feel it. Every time I saw Nate Erskine-Smith, Liberal MP in the House of Commons yesterday in Ottawa, and he was wearing a Blue Jays cap, and I felt it. I could feel it just watching him on TV.
Yeah, and I saw an interview Don Mattingly did earlier this week where he said Isaiah Kiner-Falefa should have had a bigger lead at third base on that crucial play in Game 7. So, you know, it's just twisting the knife a little bit further. But this Dylan Cease signing, I think, is helping Blue Jays fans look forward to next season.
It certainly is. And I certainly got excited when I saw this last night, Ian, because based on my limited understanding, this is one of the biggest arms on the off-season market, and we apparently didn't waste any time in getting them.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty atypical. I mean, Dylan Cease is a Scott Boras client, and he usually tries to get, obviously, as much as he possibly can, which usually means waiting until into the new year for his clients to sign. But yeah, the Blue Jays jumped the market. They got arguably the best starting pitcher on the market for 7 years and $210 million. It's the biggest free agent contract in Blue Jays history. But yeah, Dylan Cease, you know, his peripheral numbers, like he had a 4.55 ERA last year, but expected stats said his ERA should have been about a run less than that. Wasn't exactly playing in front of a great defense in San Diego the last few years, but you know, he's 30 years old. He ranks first in strikeout since the year 2000. Kevin Gausman is in second place there. So he's a high strikeout guy. Tends to walk quite a few as well, but he also keeps the ball in the yard. So I think with Kevin Gausman potentially becoming a free agent at the end of next year, Jose Barrios potentially opting out, you've probably got your new ace of the Blue Jays for the foreseeable future here.
So Gausman is still there next year, obviously, or this coming season, shall we say, looking ahead. So we've got Dylan Cease, Kevin Gausman, Shane Bieber, Trey Yesavage. At least from where I'm sitting, this is starting to sound like a rather formidable rotation, Ian.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say probably one of the best in the American League. I think they're projected to be probably the third best starting rotation in the AL behind the Boston Red Sox and the Detroit Tigers. So, yeah, all of a sudden, something that looked like an apparent weakness. Obviously, they were going to have to address the rotation with Max Scherzer and Chris Bassett coming out. But now, by adding a frontline starter like Cease, you're feeling pretty comfortable if you're the Jays with your options. I mean, even looming in the wings there, you've got Bowden Francis, who could be potentially coming back. Eric Lauer, who was a starter and reliever this past season, and then you've got a few prospects you can dip into. So I think overall, also by Shane Bieber opting into his contract for this year too, the Blue Jays have a pretty solid starting rotation heading into next year.
You mentioned earlier this is rather atypical of the Blue Jays, which of course it is, to be jumping the market, making a deal like this at this time of the off season. And I can't help but wonder if this is maybe a new direction for the front office, or maybe just an understanding that we were so close, not to twist the knife, but we were so close. We better capitalize on this momentum and see if we can't, before Barrios opts out, before Bieber maybe moves on, Gausman, etc. We got another shot at this, and let's run it back next year with some strong additions.
Yeah, I think this is a huge piece of business for the Blue Jays, because if you look ahead to next year, like I said, they've got some potential arms coming out of the starting rotation. The free agent crop doesn't exactly look all that strong next offseason, aside from Tarek Skubal of the Detroit Tigers possibly becoming a free agent. So you got a big piece of business done. And, I know you remember quite well, Mike, like Toronto used to be the town where you would have to severely overpay in terms of either dollars or term. And now all of a sudden with this franchise willing to spend, they sunk $500 million into Vladimir Guerrero Jr. They have their franchise player. They went to Game 7 of the World Series. I don't think it's a tough sell on Toronto anymore. And you also hear the players. I mean, every player and the players' wives and girlfriends spoke glowingly about the Blue Jays organization at the end of this year. So I think, it isn't a tough sell on Toronto anymore. They have the makings of a perennial contender here. They're willing to spend. And if you're a prospective free agent, why wouldn't you want to get in on that, right?
So as you look at the remainder of this off-season, Ian, is Bo Bichette the next big piece that has to be worked on? What do you see happening for this ball club?
Yeah, I think so. I think the next thing on the wish list is probably a big bat, whether it is re-signing Bo Bichette or potentially signing someone like Kyle Tucker, Cody Bellinger, Kyle Schwarber, or Alex Bregman. Those are kind of all the big free agent bats on the market. I'm kind of leaning more. It seems like since they did sink $210 million into Dylan Cease, it would be hard to imagine the Blue Jays throwing $350 million at Kyle Tucker. But I mean, this isn't a salary cap league, so the Blue Jays could give them as much money as they want. But to me, the fit with Bichette always seems to make sense. He said he wants to stay here. He fits the profile of this team where they excel. So I feel like that's probably the best fit for the Blue Jays right now is Bo Bichette. If he does end up signing elsewhere, I think Kyle Tucker would be a fantastic fit. He's a 5-tool player, arguably a little bit better of an overall player than Bo Bichette, and he's a left-handed hitter to boot. So I think any of those big bats, if the Blue Jays kind of fail to get one, I think they may go the trade route, but I think that's probably the next best thing because they've solidified. To me, I feel like their starting rotation is pretty much set up right now. They just kind of need to fill in these holes in the starting lineup.
Happy to be talking about Blue Jays baseball and looking ahead, and not just ahead, but with some enthusiasm as well after a big signing like Dylan Cease. Ian, thanks for always answering the call, my friend. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, you're welcome, Mike. Anytime.
Ian Hunter is our Blue Jay hunter, and it's pretty great at the end of November, as we're in the midst of day one of a 3-day snowstorm, to be talking about the boys of summer and what the Blue Jays just did. 7 years, $210 million for Dylan Cease. I might just remind you that the parent company of this radio station also owns the Blue Jays. My contract is not 7 years and $210 million. I don't think my contract is 7 years and $210. I do it for the love of the game, baby. But Blue Jay Hunter, always here to answer our call. Good reason to be excited about the next Blue Jays season. I'm going to send you to the 570 News Center for an update. And then, how about this? It's a classic old watering hole in Guelph. It really is. And it's now for lease, which has got people, what happened to the old Albion? I want the old Albion back. So we'll update you on what's going on with this classic old watering hole, and then take our own little trip down memory lane. A throwback Thursday to the pubs we remember fondly. Let's have the conversation on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is a place in Guelph with a rich history. It has stood for almost as long as the city itself, maybe even longer. Early 1800s for sure. And we know, thanks to the bicentennial for the city of Guelph coming up in 2027, that would mean the city itself founded in 1827. Right around the same time, the historic Albion Hotel had to be standing there. It's right on a corner. And if you're heading into Guelph and you're going to be attending a game at the Sleeman Center, oftentimes you will pass it. It's directly across the street from that beautiful basilica, which offers such a nice skyline in Guelph. Everybody knows the basilica, and across the street on the corner is the fabled Albion Hotel. It was purchased several years ago by an investor that had plans to bring it back to its former self, if you will, as a watering hole. He had ideas to make it maybe a little bit more upscale or trendy, perhaps, than your typical old watering hole, but nonetheless, there was great anticipation in Guelph for anybody that had visited the former Albion that it was coming back to what it once was, what it was for a long time. But we have learned this week that the historic landmark, Albion Hotel, is now again up for lease. So the ambition to turn it back into something that it once was, but maybe with a trendier twist, didn't exactly work out. And now the owner is moving on to other interests, but saying, hey, if you want to try something in here, I'll lease you the space. That owner is Tommy Gofton, who joins our show this morning to talk about it. And why don't we just start right there? The fact that somebody else now has the opportunity, Tommy, to come in and do their own thing with the old Albion. Why is it up for lease?
My whole reasoning behind it is that I've come to a really interesting crossroads in my life with my career paths. I tend to do a lot of different things. And over the past year, it's been a pretty interesting journey for me to make some important decisions that require, I guess, a bit of maturity. And one of them is that I liked a restaurateuring. I got into it by accident, really. And it's been a hard road, and I realized very early that restaurateuring is not something of a strength. So the building, however, and restoring the building was one of my paths. And I think a lot of people don't separate the two. They think that I bought the business of the Albion, which was the restaurant. I didn't. That was going under, and they pulled the plug on that one and let that fall apart. The previous owner of that restaurant, but which ironically was also the owner of the building, and so I took over the building. And now, when I finally got through the tumultuous COVID era of, I was supposed to have the building closed, March 17th, 2020, and that didn't work out because we all know the world shut down at that point. So I was basically on my heels, running backwards the whole time. But when I finished its restoration and got everything up and running, And, the building looks beautiful. It smells great. It had all its pipes replaced, its wires replaced. It's just all this cool stuff. I thought, well, there were many, many stop-starts for leasing the building. And then I said, well, I think maybe for a little while I'll just run something that I want to run there that's kind of fun. And, it was around that time that I also strangely hit the point in my life where all my other avenues of my career were really exploding. And I'm like, I can't do both. Like, I could run a restaurant here and I could live. You have to live and breathe these things like I did the Round Table. But I just couldn't, I couldn't do that path. So then I made the decision of saying, okay, we'll put it back out for lease, I guess. But I knew it was going to confuse people because they thought I built a restaurant.
Okay, so your hopes for this building, Tommy, and I think this is what's really at the core, because anybody in Guelph and really surrounding areas recognizes the Albion for what it's long meant to that specific corner, to the community at large. What were you hoping for that building when you took it over?
It was a bit of an accident how it fell into my lap. And so because of that, one of the reasons why I took it is because I knew the building had a strong sense of heritage. I knew the building was probably one of the top percentage of buildings in Guelph that meant something to the entire city and to history, and that intrigued me. And one of the reasons why the building was even approached to me or sold to me was because the people that knew me on the inside, despite my start-stop business acumen for, transient businesses like restaurants and cafes and things, or what are the small businesses that come and go anyway in the industry. People knew that I would actually care about the building. And so I thought this would be an interesting legacy one way or another. And what I really wanted to do was restore it, was to get it to a point where it was, when I'm dead, that building is still going to be well going past that point. And when I picked it up, it was not in good shape. So it took a lot of time and equity and energy and blood and some fights and all kinds of crazy stuff just to get that thing to where it is now. So I think really in the end it was just to bring it back to some state of health.
A lot of folks still talk about the building's storied past and why it just still can't be that, neighborhood pub on the corner, if you will, serving up some pub fare, that sort of thing. Do you have any desires or ideas of what could or should go in there as you're leasing it out? Will there be any parameters around that?
Oh, this is the line that will get everyone talking on Reddit again. No, I they write some really good fun fiction on that site, I'll tell you. I agree with them. And they can be as angry as they want about this stuff. I agree. I've always agreed. I do think that it should be a pub and have that stuff. The times change, and I've had a lot of people ask me like, "Oh, why don't you bring it back to the old days?" And I'm like, "It's been around for 160 years. What old days are you talking about? Like, which generation do you want to be? Is your grandparents' generation? Is it their grandparents? Is it the founders of Guelph when they went, hey, let's go to Stell's Tavern because that's what it used to be called? It's like." I don't understand. It changes for every generation. It just so happened to change because of COVID. I mean, news alert, COVID changed everything. So if you want everything to go back to normal, let's go back to 2019. But for me, it's like, I opened a cocktail bar. There people came in. The people that came in generally loved it. They came back a lot, so they must have liked it. The people that didn't like it didn't come back. So it's just how it goes, I guess. When someone leases it now, and look, the Guelph Today put out an article that got a lot of scathing people mad, and it got me like 9 or 10 people reviewing the building for a lease, and it was a really big push in terms of what people wanted to do. And I think that article kind of misrepresented what I said, in that it's like, oh, what do you want in there? I don't care if they pay. It's like, well, of course people have to pay if they're going to rent. That's just how business works. But for me, I would love it to be something like it was in whatever generation someone wants. And it's hard to do, but I would love it to be something where people can come in, it's accessible for food and drink, and whatever style it is, it makes some demographic happy. As long as it's safe, I said, as long as it's inclusive, so we're not pushing any demographic out and being mean, And as long as it's, something that people can rally behind. And if that's not me, great. I don't want it to be me. It doesn't need to be me. But if it's someone, awesome. I don't know.
You mentioned earlier when you took over the building, it was not in good shape. That's different now because of the work that you've put into it over these many years recently. What if for somebody who might be interested in starting whatever in the old Albion? Well, we still call it the Albion, but anyway, in that building, what kind of building are they coming into?
Oh, it's been shelled. Like, we shelled it to the frame in a lot of places, rebuilt it from the ground up, new bathrooms. All the wiring is done, all the pipe work is done. Like, everything is just clean in there now. It shouldn't have the standard issues of an old building if you're releasing it, where you got power issues and dripping water pipes and ceilings popping because of water leakage and stuff like that. I mean, I think we're going to be good for a few years. Gosh, I hope. God, I hope. It was a very rough time, but we got through it.
Tommy, I really appreciate you making time for the show today. Thank you very much for being here.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Tommy Gofton owns the Albion, although he is not operating it as a restaurateur anymore. It just didn't work out the way that he had hoped. He has moved on to other interests, but the building still stands. It's been spruced up inside, to say the very least. The guts of it are in better shape, and now it is back out to the public for lease. Maybe somebody does want to get back to the quote-unquote olden days of the Albion, where it was just that pub that you walked into, kind of like Cheers, where everybody knows your name, right? A 160-year tradition. And as Tommy jokes, which era do you want to go back to? Your grandparents' era? Their parents' era? Whatever it happens to be. There is a long history at the Albion. So this being Thursday, of course, I thought what better time to do a little bit of a throwback. Maybe you've got a fond memory of your time at the Albion itself in Guelph. Or maybe there was another watering hole that you used to frequent and it is no longer. I thought we'd make this a little bit of a throwback Thursday opportunity to remember the pubs we once frequented. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It was just a place that you enjoyed going to that is no longer there. And why is your answer, if you're in Kitchener, the old Evergreen on Highland Road? I mean, that's the first one that comes to mind for me, of course, but maybe you have something different entirely. The pub you used to go to that is no longer there, and gosh darn it, you miss it. A lot of people miss the Albion in Guelph. It was thought that Tommy Gofton was going to be able to resurrect it. It didn't happen. What about for you in whatever town you're listening from today? The pub that was there that is no longer, and gosh darn it, you miss it. Let's take a little trip down memory lane here with a throwback Thursday to the pubs we miss. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
In whatever generation someone wants, and it's hard to do, but I would love it to be something where people can come in, it's accessible for food and drink, and whatever style it is, it makes some demographic happy. As long as it's safe, I said, as long as it's inclusive, so we're not pushing any demographic out and being mean, and as long as it's something that people can rally behind. And if that's not me, great. Don't want it to be me. It doesn't need to be me. But if it's someone, awesome.
Tommy Gofton says doesn't have to be him. He still owns the building, the old Albion Hotel in Guelph, 160 years of tradition, and remembered most fondly as just that watering hole. Nothing fancy about it. Go in, get some pub fare, get a cold drink, enjoy the conversation with the others in the pub at the time. He was hoping to make it work with something called the Round Table. He had a bit of a trendier idea with different kinds of cocktails and whatnot. Draft beer and fish and chips, probably the way to go, or what we remember it most fondly as. So as we update the story on Tommy's ownership of the Albion, and he's not making his trendier idea work, but he's putting the building back out for lease after doing some extensive work inside to make it, I guess, more modern and get some aging infrastructure taken care of. What becomes of the Albion? What became of the bars that we used to love? We thought we'd do a little throwback on this Thursday and talk about those pubs we used to visit that are no longer there, and gosh darn it, we miss them. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. We'll start with Mark. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Mike. Back in the day, Mike, when I was a teenager, that's a long time ago, we used to hang out at the Metro, and the place was underground. It was called the Back Door.
Oh, yeah, I remember the Back Door. Well, I was a little bit young, but we had Coral Andrews on the show some time ago to talk about her book about it. Yeah, great little place.
Yeah, I remember that, Mike, that conversation you had with her. And actually, I picked up the book because I used to hang out there, like I said.
Nice. And so if they reopened, I mean, why not, Mark? Why couldn't we bring something like that back?
Yeah, I don't know. That'd be really cool.
It would be. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate the call. And sometimes, in fairness, those sorts of things are best left in our memories as nostalgia. Not that they couldn't work, but there's just something about them, and we remember them so fondly. And maybe they were meant to live in that place and time in our memory, and that's okay. But yes, the Back Door, something I was blissfully ignorant of until Coral wrote her book and we had her on the show to talk about it, and I had no idea. The Metro, always a place, obviously, that I've been going for some of the best ding-dang schnitzel you're ever going to find. My entire life, I had no idea of literally the back door to it, to a basement kind of club/bar that was incredibly popular once upon a time. The Evergreen Motel on Highland Road frequently comes up in conversations like this. The old Coronet, too, and not for the reason you might think. It was a bar, it was a music venue, and yes, at one period in its history, it also had scantily clad or barely clad women dancing around there. But the Coronet was another place in Kitchener that is fondly remembered for all of those other reasons. The music, just the good old-fashioned feel to it. There used to be, and now I remember reading about it, I believe it has become a pool hall, or at least part of it has, because the bar itself has been closed and restaurant for quite some time. But McCabe's in downtown Kitchener, they've got one still in uptown Waterloo, and the building still stands in downtown Kitchener, basically the corner of King and Francis. And our radio station used to be a King and Water. I mean, that's basically kitty corner. You walk out the front door of the radio station and hang a left diagonal, and you're walking in the front door of McCabe's. And my fondness for that place, it was just the right feel. You know, it just had your pub grub, which was perfect, great staff, great service, cold beer. What else could you ask for? And even before I started working out of that building at King and Water, at the time I was in kind of a transition period, still with Rogers Radio, but working out of our station in Toronto at the Fan. And I'd finish my show at 10 in the morning, and by the time I got back to town, 11:30, 12 o'clock, boom, pop in, grab a bite to eat, catch up on my newspapers, whatever, just sit there on the corner of the bar. Absolutely loved it. And then when I returned to that building at King and Water in downtown Kitchener, I continued the tradition, so to speak, and sometimes I'd be there waiting for the door to open at 11:30. Well, it was a great place, and I know the building is still there and it's being repurposed now, which is super. But it's one of those, it just had the right feel, the right atmosphere for me, and I do miss a place like that. Dennis, what about you? The pub you miss?
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Not bad. I'm driving down Highway 6 to Fergus.
How's the weather?
It's blowing and snowing a little bit.
All right,
not bad.
you be careful out there, young man.
Yeah. Played in bands for a long time back in the 60s. And what about what's the old hotel down there in Preston, the Preston Springs?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Remember that one?
How could I forget?
The Breslau Hotel.
Oh, there's another really good one. Yes.
Yeah, we played there a lot. And the Evergreens did all that. And another one nobody thinks of is the Twin Gables in Listowel.
Not familiar with the Twin Gables.
Man, that was a place to be.
Whatever happened to those places, Dennis?
Well, you know, when I grew up, let's face it, in the 60s, nobody will ever live those years again.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I said about the
They were the They were the best years you could possibly get. And everybody I talk to, they say how great things are. I say, you don't know. If you didn't live the 60s, man, I'm telling you, you missed out on a big part.
I'll bet you did. Dennis, I appreciate the call. I hope you stay safe out there traveling Highway 6 on a wintry day like this, where I'm sure the snow is going to be blowing. Dennis is one of our listeners from Guelph, and he's making his way up Highway 6 to Fergus as we speak. But listen, I didn't live the 60s. I'm born in 71. So really, it was the early 90s by the time I was drinking age. And I was not one of those guys that was sneaking in with fake IDs. That just wasn't my cup of tea, I guess. But I still have some fond memories of some bars too, but not the places that were playing the music and having that scene that Dennis is talking about. Time is merciless, isn't it? And it just continues to march on, as it does every day here on the show. I tell you often, the clock is my boss, always has been. So the clock is telling me I've got to get you to the 570 News Center for an update. And then Thursday mornings, 11:30, right after this 570 News Center update, we always take a break and have some fun on something called the Flipside. You might have noticed an hour ago, our good friend Gary Chalk was not here for Living Retired. That's because Gary has hurt himself. And the way that he hurt himself just makes me shake my head. Oh, Gary, you living retired fool, you. So on the flip side today, we're going to ask you the strange way you injured yourself. What did you do that ended up being an injury to yourself? Those are the stories we'll share. Your participation is required on the flip side next. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. So you may have noticed an hour ago, our good friend Gary Chalk was not here for his weekly segment we call Living Retired. That's the humor column that Gary writes, and he brings it to life on our show each and every Thursday morning at 10:30, except, of course, this Thursday morning, because Gary was just unable to answer the bell, so to speak. You may recall, if you've heard the segment in recent weeks, Gary took an unfortunate tumble. And it was just one of those things. You know, it's funny, living retired, so 65 plus. And earlier on the show today, we were also talking about that Aging Well panel discussion that's coming to the Waterloo Community Pavilion tomorrow from 9:30 until noon. It's free for you to attend. Get information on managing medications, preventing falls, etc. The idea being, the more we can do by way of prevention, the less time we will spend in our sick care, as I like to call it, system, and maybe we can age in place. So a lot of tips around maintenance, prevention, etc. And wouldn't you know, Gary, and 65 plus, takes a fall while carrying a ladder. And this fall, as Gary described it to me when he emailed me yesterday to say, I can't make it for the show tomorrow, Mike. It's the gift that keeps on giving, Gary says, because you may have heard him say in the last few weeks here on Living Retired, which is Thursdays at 10:30 in the morning, that the fall with the ladder and the subsequent smack to the face led to some emergency dental work that needed to be done. And now something has happened. I ain't no doctor. I'm not going to try to play one here on the radio today, but something has happened to Gary's arm where it gets so painful he can barely move, not just the arm, but the rest of his body, because it's been messed up so much, got twisted, whatever it was that happened when he fell with the ladder. So just imagine you're walking from the back of your house to the front of your house. You're carrying a ladder like you've done hundreds of times before. You trip up some way, somehow, down you go, and all of a sudden it's a couple of trips to the dentist, and now extra trips this week to urgent care because the pain in your arm is so bad you didn't even know initially that you had hurt your arm, and here you are. So using that as our inspiration today, on the flip side, I'm asking you about the strange way you injured yourself. All Gary was doing was taking a ladder from the back of the house to the front of the house. And that fall, what did you trip over? A blade of grass? That remains a mystery. But the gift, as Gary said in his email, keeps on giving, from the dental work to whatever the heck it is that's going on with his arm now, just because he fell doing something he's done hundreds of times before. So how did you injure yourself in a very strange, if not insignificant way? 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Doug got a jump on this. He called the show right as we started this morning because he knew he would be out of range with his driving by the time 11:30 rolled around. And he said he just injured himself today. His left hand is too sore to hold the steering wheel. Goodness gracious, on a day like this, he's a one-handed driver. My goodness. But because he picked up his travel mug of coffee off the counter this morning, not realizing that the lid was loose, and he proceeded to spill the coffee all over his hand and scalded himself to the point that, as he put it, his paw is a little sore as he drives today. So there you go. Gary's arm is so sore he can't even get up and join us on the show today. That's how much he twisted his arm with that fall with the ladder. And how about this one from one of my coworkers this morning when I told her this was coming up? She said she injured herself putting a fitted sheet onto a bed. And I'm like, okay, what? But in the effort to stretch it and get it fitted properly, her hand slipped, her finger came up and poked her right in the eye. She scratched her cornea. And to this day, years later, it still impacts her. Every now and again, she needs to go and seek some treatment, and the doctors say the nerves have memories. Like, it'll never be back to quote-unquote normal, but it will still flare up, all because she was making a bed and her hand slipped off that fitted sheet and she poked herself right in the eye. Years later, still paying the price. So what was it you did that ended up in an injury? The strange ways we have hurt ourselves. Misery loves company, don't you know? We'll start with Mike, Farwell's Force member number 37 this morning. Hello, Mike.
Hi, Mike. I'm 6'7" tall, and there's problems of being that tall. One of the things I did was I walked into a ceiling fan and I got 6 stitches.
Oh my gosh.
I also one time some of the doors in older homes are only 6'6", and I was helping a friend with a dinner one night, and I saw something boiling over on the stove, so I ran through the doorway, and I knocked myself out cold because the doorway was 6'6" and I'm 6'7", and that ended up with a concussion. So that's the way I've hurt myself: ceiling fans and doorways.
Mike, as somebody who is not 6'7", I'm having a hard time sympathizing.
Okay, well, that's what happens when you're tall.
Yeah, I guess it does. I wouldn't know, my friend. I wouldn't know, but there you go. A ceiling fan for stitches and a conky, as we call it in sports, from a doorway, because it ain't easy being 6'7", says Mike. Let's go next to Francis. Francis, good morning.
Good morning.
What strange way did you injure yourself?
Well, I don't know. It was an injury. I knocked myself sensible. I don't know. This was back in the late 50s, early 60s when I was, when you're invisible, you can do anything. I decided to take the toboggan at nighttime, and I went down to Promosa Hill where the brewery was. You know where that is.
I sure do.
And I didn't realize there was irrigating pipes that were sticking up. And I'm laying down on this here toboggan, and am I ever picking up speed? And bang! I saw stars. I almost split the toboggan in half, but I never told Dad about it because you know what happens when you do something stupid. You don't tell your parents.
So wait a minute, but how did you hide the bruises or whatever happened?
Well, I think I had a bit of an eggnog, and I had a whole lot more hair. That's probably what saved me back then than what I have right now.
Oh, Francis, I love it. Thank you for the call. You see, we do feel invincible when we're younger, so why don't we go tobogganing in the dark? Yeah, right. Then there are the irrigation pipes on Formosa Hill, heading right down there to the brewery. I have a feeling maybe Francis was hoping to gather enough speed going down that hill he could crash right through the wall of the brewery and have himself a little tipple there in the winter's night. Mary, good morning.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Mike with a mic.
Good morning, Mary, on your bike.
I miss Gary.
Don't worry. I'm sure Gary is on the mend, and hopefully we can give him a few laughs today.
Yeah, but I missed my bicycle time.
Uh-oh.
Anyway, Mike, this was a few years ago, and I'm of German heritage, and my husband is from Liverpool, and he always called me his little squarehead, as we are known, correct?
Yes, we are. I include myself in that category.
Yeah. So, however, I don't know. One evening, I don't know, I was went into the fridge for something. I might have had socks on, and I spun around, and I hit the drywall, and I put a hole in it.
Hang on. You were at the fridge?
Yeah.
And then you hit the drywall. Something happened in between here.
No, I had socks or something on, and when I went to close the fridge, I spun around and hit the drywall. It wasn't that far from the fridge.
Okay. So you lost your balance a bit. I got you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a big hole there.
Like a hole the size of your head, Mary?
Darn tootin'.
Uh-oh. Is it square?
No, it was round.
Something's wrong.
And I said to my husband, come and look at this. I'm not a square head. I'm a round head.
There you go.
And I said to my son, maybe we should frame it. What do you think of that, Mike?
I think that's a great idea, Mary.
So do I.
Thanks for the call. Good to hear from you. You can frame it and put a little sign on it that says not a square head. How about that? Jacqueline, good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
Oh, Jax, it's so nice to hear your voice.
Thank you. Have I got a crazy story for you?
Okay.
It's one of my funnest. So I don't even know if that's the right word, funnest. But anyway.
We're going to take it. I like it.
I was going horse riding, and one day I went out into the field, and this little auction pony jumped up on a ledge. And now on one side of me, I've got a 4-foot drop into the river. And on the other side of me, I've got a 4-foot drop into a cornfield. And I knew this little pony was not stable on her legs. And she took off at a full gallop. So in my stupidity, I thought it would be a better idea to jump off a galloping pony than it would be to sit tight and just see where she takes me.
Right.
So I jumped off, and I landed up crushing my left hand. And so now I have 4 screws in my left hand. But the funny thing was, when I jumped off, the blessing of being in shock is that I got up and I saw my ring finger had rotated and gone into my hand.
Oh, dear. Oh, boy. Ouch.
I know. And so I looked at it, and I looked at my friend who was riding with me, and I said, oh, wow, I think that's kind of broken.
Kind of broken.
Yes. Anyway, that's my story for today. Love your show, Mike.
Love you, Jack. Thanks a lot for the call.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Great to hear from you today. So the moral of that story is when the horse is galloping at its own pace, in its own direction, just stick with it. See where the horse is going to take you instead of trying to jump off the galloping horse. The lessons we're learning as we talk on the flip side today about those strange injuries we suffered, from spilling scalding coffee on our hand to poking ourselves in the eye when we're making the bed, those darned fitted sheets. They'll give you fits, all right. What was the weird way you injured yourself? That's our question for you this morning on the flip side. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Okay, we're going to have to establish a new rule on this show, and that is if you're sending an email with pictures, there needs to be a warning. Scroll at your own risk. I'm talking to you, Wes. Oh, my goodness gracious. Wes sends an email to Mike at 570news.com about the strange way he hurt himself. Hey, Mike, this summer I was mowing the grass in my backyard along the fence line. I had my work boots on like always. I mowed over a piece of wire about 1 inch long. The wire went through the side of my boot and into my ankle bone. There was only about a millimeter or so sticking out of the bone. I had to have surgery to get it removed. We think the wire came from the previous owners of the house. They had flowers tied up against the fence. All good now. Take care. But then Wes sends the picture of the x-ray, the picture of the piece of wire in his hand. And then I didn't want to see the picture of your ankle, Wes. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to be unkind. I'm sure you have lovely ankles, but that is not the kind of picture I wanted to see with the repairs after the surgery. Also, I always felt like I was doing a pretty smart thing when I wore my work boots to mow the grass. Now apparently I should just go mow in sandals again. Oh, anyway, please send me a trigger warning when you're sending pictures like that in an email. It would be appreciated. Rob in Cambridge, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm better now, and it wasn't that long ago. I recently went on a dental tourism trip. I had to get massive surgery done in my mouth. The night before, Mike, they said to me it was my last night to eat, so we went out and ate. And if anybody's been to Mexico, they know the roads aren't, the walkways aren't as even as they are here, let alone watched after. So we're watching every hole, every nook, every cranny in the road as we're walking. And somehow, I have no clue how, but I'm 61, about 250 pounds, about 6'1". I don't see it. There's mud on the ground. I slip. And I do the splits. Now, at my age, Mike, that's impossible.
Well, I don't know. I mean, impossible or just painful? Which is it?
Well, I now know what a chicken bone feels like. But the long story short is I decide I completely fall like a sack of salami. And then what happens is, I guess the instinct in me of embarrassment was, oh, my God, people are all over. They're going to see me here. And I fell in the mud. I'm covered in the mud. I decide to try to get myself up. And at about the three-quarter mark, I slipped again. The only difference is my legs fly out from the side, and now I fall right on my shoulder blade. I end up cracking part of my sternum and two ribs right before the surgery.
My goodness gracious.
So,
Robert.
yeah, it was just a nightmare. And you know what? As bad as the surgery was on my mouth, the only thing that I felt for the entire week and a half that I was recovering down there was I can barely breathe.
Cracked ribs, right?
Cracked ribs.
Absolutely. Oh, it's one of the worst. Rob, I'm glad you're better now. Thanks for the call.
Thanks, buddy.
Good to hear from you. That is awful, doing the split. I would be in so much trouble. I can't even touch my toes. Well, imagine this. It's the inspiration for our weird ways we've injured ourselves conversation this morning. Mr. Gary Chalk, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Mike with a mic, and Mary on her bike.
She missed her bike ride, Gary. She only rides when we're talking.
Yeah, well, my goodness, boy, I don't know if that's a good fitness plan or not. But anyways, thanks for everybody. I'm feeling for prescription medications eventually work. That's what I'm here to say.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. Well, I went to the Probus Club I was speaking at in Cambridge yesterday morning. Had a great time. I don't know what I did, but this arm has been bothering me, my left arm, the forearm, since I fell. And I don't know, I was getting out of the car, I twisted, did something, and as one of the emergency room doctors who was a friend of mine when he was in Newfoundland doing his training, he always talked about patients coming in and he'd say, how do you feel? And they'd say they are in some pain. Well, I was in some pain yesterday, I'll tell you, but nonetheless, the medications are working, and I'm actually holding this phone in my left arm right now.
Oh, attaboy, Gary. The meds are a wonderful thing, aren't they?
They are.
Don't take too many.
That's the thing, exactly. And for anybody else who's suffering, if you've got a spouse who can help, Nurse Jan has been tremendous. The call bell I had on my nightstand, I wouldn't recommend one because last time I saw it was when she picked it up and she was throwing it through the bedroom window. So, that's just a suggestion.
All right, Gary. I'm glad you're on the mend. You take good care.
And we'll be back next Thursday.
All right. Look forward to that, Gary. Gary Chalk joins us Thursday mornings, except this Thursday morning because the injury, it's just too much. He's got some meds now to keep the pain at bay. And it's a good thing Nurse Jan threw that bell out the window and not at Gary's head. Otherwise, we'd be dealing with another injury this morning. Grant is with us on the flip side. Grant, what strange way did you hurt yourself?
Way back when I was
a little lad, I was going through my closet, and we had one of those old-fashioned cast iron fans. And, I accidentally, I guess I pulled the cord, and it whacked me right at the top of my head. I don't recall even yelling or screaming, but I guess I must have had to get some stitches. And this segment of yours makes me think of this program that they have on TV, weird emergency accident.
Yeah, I'll bet. So you show up at the emergency room and you try to explain yourself. I promise I didn't steal the idea from whatever TV show that is. I don't know what TV show that is. I told you with honesty because it's the only way I know how to be. Gary Chalk couldn't join us this morning because the freak fall with the ladder has led to extensive or extended injuries. I thought there must be other stories like that out there, and you have not disappointed, as usual, you beautiful thing, you. It wasn't too long ago, in the last year or so, maybe a little more than a year, whatever, but boy, oh boy, did I mess up my back, and all I did was bend over to pick up the dog's leash off the floor. I've heard about this happening to people before. It happened to me that day. Bent down, and then I literally fell onto all fours and stayed there. And it took me a while to get up the muster, to lean on the counter and drag myself up like Rocky on the ropes at the end of Rocky 2. But I made it. I'm nothing like Rocky. But I got up again, and my back was, it was messed up for many, many days. I tried to stretch it a little while after that. I stopped stretching it now, so it's going to happen again someday. So that's how I roll. I got to get you rolling right to the 570 News Center for an update. And then we've got open line time so we can hear directly from you on the issues of the day. Maybe there's a snowstorm where you are. So far, so good in Kitchener. Talkback coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage out of sight, or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
All right, quickly, let me start with this, and I'm going to get right to the phones because I'm going to get right to the phones. I really rushed through that. My apologies. Phones are already getting busy, and I know you want to have your say on Talkback, and I want you to have your say. That's why we set aside this hour for you every single day. Reflections on the issues of the day or something you want to make an issue of the day. And holy Hannah, do we ever have issues of the day, right? How about 2 National Guard members shot in Washington? FBI now investigating that as an act of terrorism. That'll do lots to settle down polarization in the United States, won't it? Oh, my goodness gracious. We've got a $173 million police communications and emergency response center being questioned by regional council, and that's a big price tag for a building in our community when there are so many other priorities for funding. And, well, I mean, I don't mean to tempt or tease the weather gods, but I still see a little blue sky outside. So far, so good, at least here, when it comes to the snowstorm. But it's a 3-day event, so what doesn't or what hasn't arrived yet may still be on its way. Richard sends an email through our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Mike Farwell Show, always there. But I got to tell you, quickest line to get me, please email Mike at 570news.com because I don't always see these messages quickly at all. So if you want to be in touch with the show, and I want you to do that, Mike at 570news.com. It's real simple. If you're on the computer for Facebook, you're on email, right? Mike at 570news.com. But Richard says, I was wondering if you would be kind enough to give the mom market happening at the Cambridge Centre Mall today a little bit of a plug. So there you go, my friend. Richard writes some fantasy, and it's got his books there. But the mom market is happening today and tomorrow, all day at Cambridge Center Mall. We're a bunch of unique vendors, and we're all set up across from Eastside Mario's inside one of the vacant mall spaces. We invite everyone to come on out and get a jump start on their Christmas shopping list. So, Richard, thanks for the message. Please remember, easiest way, Mike at 570news.com, but the mom market is happening at Cambridge Center Mall all day today, all day tomorrow, as long as the mall is open. Richard also notes that he is Farwell's Force member number 243 or something like that. I'll tell you what, Richard, I don't even have a 243 yet. I'm at 241. That's the number Justin claimed yesterday. But I have found you at 223. I think that's you. I have a Richard at number 223. Please, when you get your official Farwell's Force membership number, remember it. I'm doing the best I can. I got a list. It's better if our lists are in sync, right? So, Richard, you are number 223, which brings me to member number 64, who sends a message from Mexico. Listen, Susie, I'm glad you're listening. From Mexico. And with this wintry, blustery, cold weather here, I'm not jealous of you at all. But another Farwell's Force member. We are a force for good, a force for change, a force to be reckoned with. Checking in, we've gone international today, all the way to Mexico for the show. I love it. And if you want to be an official member of Farwell's Force, all you have to do is listen for 15 minutes every day. 15 minutes every day. But if you do that, we'll add you to our list of members. Just drop me an email, Mike at 570news.com, or call in and tell me you want to be on the list. We'll put you on there. That's all it takes, 15 minutes a day. Jersey Bill, Farwell's Force member number 12. Good afternoon.
Oh, thanks for remembering. Yes, very good.
Right off the top of my head. I don't even have it in front of me, but I remember that.
Well, of course, I'm going to say Happy American Thanksgiving to any other American who might be listening out there, and even those who aren't American who remember our holiday, as you did this morning. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What I'd like to talk about is once, just thinking back at that crazy meeting between the mayor of New York, the incoming mayor of New York, and President Trump. One thing that really struck me, I suppose having that populist kind of, which is a kind of catch-all phrase, political philosophy, I guess, in which they're able to relate to the people. Essentially, that's what it means. But they're two entirely different kinds of populism. As McDonough himself has said, he's more of a collectivist, democratic, socialist populism. Which means that he's going to be in favor of things that are beneficial to the greatest number of people, and maybe higher taxes on the richer members of society. Whereas Trump, he's more of an individualistic libertarian populist. So that's why he's so big on things like the Second Amendment. Everybody should protect themselves, and I'm going to just send you a check. I'm not going to go through the government anymore. Just a direct check back to you to cover the cost of the tariffs or whatever it is. Everybody's for them. It's every man for himself, which is an entirely different idea. So that's, if there's going to be any real tension between the two of them, that's where it's going to happen, the collectivism against this kind of radical individualism.
Billy, appreciate the call and the reminder that it is Thanksgiving for our friends south of the border. Again, I'll say, you do it right, America, when it comes to Thanksgiving. Turn it into a 4-day holiday weekend, which reminds me also I have to change the channel on my monitor here in the studio and start watching some football, right? Lions-Packers getting us started or something like that. Anyway, on the point of that meeting at the White House between President Trump and Mayor Mamdani, they seemed to get along famously. And Donald Trump, the president, even said he beat some strong competitors in that race for the mayoralty of New York. So we'll see how this all plays out. But given the sort of friction between the two leaders, the president and the mayoral hopeful during the campaign, I thought it was nice to see them shaking hands and saying nice things about one another after that meeting in Washington. Talkback continues to conservative Charlie next. Good afternoon, Charlie.
Oh, hi, Mike. Maybe just a little feedback on your yesterday's, excellent Waterloo Region Record opinion piece titled Free Transit for Seniors, Long Overdue. I thought that was just an excellent piece, Mike, and I certainly hope all township and city and regional politicians read this, especially free spenders like Karen Redmond, Dorothy McCabe, and Scott Hamilton. So, Mike, I have 3 quick suggestions to the political establishment to implement free transit for seniors without raising any taxes whatsoever. Number 1, Mike, stop signing all non-disclosure agreements so taxpayers can get to the bottom of scandals like the one surrounding plowing over 800 acres of corn. Number 2, stop installing more of these goofy bicycle lanes, which are especially useless in winter. And number 3, Mike, since the City of Toronto, as of last year, stopped the curbside mechanical leaf collection, we could do the exact same thing here, Mike.
Charlie, excellent point on the last one for sure. We can make the argument between bike lanes versus making transit free for seniors. My suggestion in the column in yesterday's Waterloo Region Record is one that I've made on the show before, and that's why I thought, you know what, I can spin this out into a column. Frankly, I don't understand how we are not yet offering even 1 day a week of free transit to seniors in this community. Heck, I was reminded since the column appeared yesterday that seniors have to apply. And I remember when Brian Paul from Supportive Housing of Waterloo came on the show to talk about this. Seniors basically have to apply and prove their eligibility for a discounted bus pass, which is utterly ridiculous. Trying to navigate this online world that they're not comfortable or familiar with and make them prove that they should be eligible for some kind of discount. What are we doing here? I would argue that these folks likely have paid into the system through their taxes for decades without reaping the benefit of it. And now when they can benefit best, you don't provide it to them. It's very strange to me. So again, just even 1 day a week. As people get older, they are less likely to be driving for any number of reasons. Could be health related. They might have had their license taken away. So you're providing them some level of independence. They can get out. They can run some errands. They can get to appointments. They can do some shopping. Maybe they just want to meet with their friends somewhere that they can all take transit to. They've probably got the time in their day. So if it takes them an hour or an hour 15 to navigate the transit system, so be it. But give them the opportunity. Allow them that socialization. Allow them that independence. To me, it just makes so much sense. We'll reduce loneliness. We'll increase independence. And my suggestion for making it work funding-wise is put advertising on your ION trains. There you go. It was a $500,000 opportunity a year ago. You said no to it. Well, Sharon Livingston, chair of, is it Cambridge Council on Aging? I forget the organization, but Sharon Livingston is involved in this, and she asked, I thought, regional council the perfect question. Is transit a service or is it a business based on cost recovery? I think it's a service, and even if you want to run it as a business and recover those costs, put the advertising on the ION, fund free transit, even 1 day a week for seniors. It's a no-brainer. Piece of cake. Talkback continues on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Every day from noon until 1, we open the phone lines and ask you to share your thoughts on the issues of the day or an issue that you would like to make the issue for us to talk about. It's open line conversation on the Talkback Hour, 519-570-2545, star 570 and 1-800-570-5715. Dave in Cambridge, Farwell's Force, member number 47. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. A couple very quick points. Number one, the sun keeps breaking through here in Cambridge. No snow. And number two is thank you for your positive and comments in the article in the paper about seniors and public transit. Holy mackerel. Anyway, that's quick point number 2. And the last point, I want to draw your attention, your memory's better than mine, on the real bad fire. I think the number was around 100 people died in England on that high-rise fire. And that was a few years ago. And didn't Hong Kong learn anything about that? And I hope Canada never repeats the issue. Have a great day, Mike, and thank you.
Thanks, Dave, for the call. Yes, I don't remember the death toll specifically from that horrible fire in England several years ago, but your point is well taken. I don't know that Hong Kong or any other nation could have unbuilt what was already built insofar as what we are bearing witness to now from the other side of the world. But these things are horrific. And look, I don't want to fearmonger in any way, but this has been brought up. So while we're on the point, why don't we just pause for a moment and consider the impact that these tall towers have on our emergency responders? When's the last time you saw a ladder truck that could reach the 51st floor of a building? And what if you are that emergency responder charged with getting up all of those stairs because an elevator is out of service to reach somebody in need on the 46th floor of one of these tall buildings? These are, I don't know where. I was going to say secondary, maybe tertiary. I don't know how much further down the list we go, but considerations when it comes to the kinds of buildings that we are putting up in our community today. And I know with the standards and regulations to which these buildings are held, it is less and less likely that such tragedies will occur, these big fires in buildings like this. But never say never, as the saying goes. And I hear where you're coming from, Dave. It might just be the new way that we exist in this world, given the fact that we are, quite frankly, condominium crazy in this part of the world right now, because more and more people, less and less space. So there's only one way to go, and that is up. And we talked about it on the show earlier today with the 33 and 37 story towers proposed for King Street South by William, just on the cusp of uptown Waterloo, which led to this email from Clinton, by the way, to Mike at 570news.com. How the HE double hockey sticks, love that usage, Clinton, does building two 30-plus story towers, with the majority of units being one bedroom, help address our housing crisis? Developers continue to prioritize what maximizes profit, while the needs of families are overlooked. As you mentioned, these condos will be purchased and most will end up rented to students. We do not need more student housing. We need housing that supports families. I recently reviewed a CMHC report which stated that the region of Waterloo currently has the highest rental vacancy since 1993. That rate now sits at 3.6%, which translates to approximately 1,040 vacant units. The majority of them, one-bedroom apartments. Yet we keep building and rents are not coming down. Clinton, appreciate the email and the work you've done reviewing Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation reports and whatnot. But it is a good point. We do need the housing. This will, in large part, become investment housing. It's being developed the way that it is to maximize the profit for the developer. And I don't begrudge anybody their ability to make a buck when they're the ones investing the millions to get the buildings into the air. I get that. You want to maximize your return on that. It's the way the world works. But the other side of it is, if we're building a majority of one-bedroom condominium units, investors are going to scoop them up, and then they're just going to rent them back out into the community. And we'll find out who needs the one-bedroom. And a lot of them, especially in that part of our community, near uptown Waterloo, I don't dispute the fact that it will likely be students for the most part. Just going back to what Dave said initially, in his call about sunshine in Cambridge right now, no snow. I'm looking out my window and we're pretty good right now. It keeps coming and going. It's exactly what we expected. The winds whip up, whatever the system is, kind of locks in over a given area, a given part of this community. The snow flurries whip around for a little bit, then it goes away, then it comes back again. I just want us two things. One is, let's not tempt the weather gods too much, okay? There is still more to come from this system as it moves through today and tomorrow, even into Saturday a little bit. So we'll see. So let's not tempt them too much, okay? But the other thing is, I know that there were some organizations that may have today changed their usual routines in anticipation of what the storm was expected to bring. I set my alarm a little bit earlier this morning because I expected to be up and needing some extra time to trudge out to the car, get the car ready to go to work, all of these different things. Look, I'm never going to complain about an extra 10 minutes in my morning. I can find a way to use it, believe you me. But based on all of the talk, remember, this started at 30 to 50 centimeters, was lowered to 15 to 30 centimeters. But we were even thinking yesterday, and I can tell you that we here at the radio station prepared for the eventuality, if not expectation, of closures to be reporting this morning. And just in anticipation of what didn't yet arrive, people made different decisions today. Work from home decisions, this kind of decision, cancel that decision. And so far, knock on wood, I just, sometimes I wonder about all of the anticipation. It's like information overload. We want you to be ready for the worst, but then when it doesn't come, how much have we impacted our time? Just got this via breaking news alert that it has been signed. Prime Minister Mark Carney and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith have signed a pipeline deal. The Memorandum of Understanding commits to the province and the feds working together to build an oil pipeline to the West Coast. What do you make of that? We knew it was coming, of course. It's a whole new energy world in this country. This is the Mike Farwell Show. The Talkback Hour continues on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Couple of relatively big things on the local front, one of which is connected to housing. We were talking about that just before the news update with Matt, and the idea that these two very large towers being built in Waterloo, where the Urban Good Funeral Home is now, is likely not going to be the kind of housing that we need to truly and meaningfully address this housing crisis that we know that we're in the midst of, because a majority of one-bedroom units are going to end up largely, I would think, as investment units, and that means they're just being rented back out to people who need a one-bedroom apartment, or maybe they cram more people into a single-bedroom unit. But probably not exactly the sort of housing that we're looking for. And Lord knows we've got a lot of it, right? If you want a condo, this is the place to come and get yourself a condo. In Kitchener, however, the city has provided more land to fund and support affordable housing. So this land was declared surplus. I think that was the language we were using a little while back in Kitchener. It's basically the corner of Wellington and Lancaster. I'm pretty sure there's an old, I think the building is still there, an old automotive repair shop or garage or something like that. Anyway, it's an odd-shaped piece of land, and it's a kind of peculiar parcel of land, if you will. However, the city says it's going to support the development of about 30 transitional housing units for government-assisted newly arrived Canadians, with 15 four-bedroom units, 5 three-bedroom units, and 10 one-bedroom units. So kind of the opposite of what we're talking about there in Waterloo with the condominium towers, right? This is where the majority were one-bedroom. This is actually the minority one-bedroom, 15 four-bedroom units, 5 three-bedroom units, and 10 one-bedroom units. In addition to the city providing land, Reception House is going to get a $300,000 grant through the City of Kitchener's not-for-profit affordable rental and co-op housing incentive program. So this is done by the City of Kitchener with help from the Housing Accelerator Fund, which is that federal fund. There is another municipal fund that will provide Reception House with the $300,000 to work on this affordable rental and co-op housing incentive program. And what we end up with on this parcel of surplus land, if you will, in the City of Kitchener is 15 four-bedroom units, 5 three-bedroom units, and 10 one-bedroom units. Again, it's a bit of an odd shape, but I don't know how deep it goes. I don't know what it looks like from an aerial perspective. But obviously they would have planned this out to know that on this rather peculiar slice of land on Wellington Street near Lancaster, they'll be able to do this. So the City of Kitchener providing the land and a little bit of the funding to make sure this happens for new Canadians who are in need of that transitional housing as they move into their next step of permanent housing. A decent sign for the housing problems that we have in this community. Housing was also brought up at Regional Council yesterday in connection to the Waterloo Regional Police Service budget. So that budget, as you know, is seeking about $20 million in and around 6% more than its budget from a year ago. One of the things within this budget is a new communications center, kind of like an emergency response center. We know that regional paramedics have expressed an interest in being a part of it. Fire services so far have not expressed that same interest. So we'll wait to see how that all plays out. I think fire services should absolutely be in this communication center. I don't see why we wouldn't have all of our emergency responders responding from that same area. I can only imagine how much more effective it would be if the communication can happen over one side of a cubicle wall or whatever that might look like. Makes abundant sense to me. But this is a big ticket item that regional police are proposing at $173 million. And as regional councillors pushed back on that yesterday, they were wondering about other priorities in the community. And regional councillor for Kitchener, for Waterloo, Chantel Hewening, was especially forceful on the idea of, listen, we've got a housing crisis in this community. How can we have a housing crisis on one hand and a $173 million communication center on the other hand? And this was the answer that we got from Regional Police Chief Mark Crowell.
To your direct question about having one communications project versus housing in terms of priorities, every community would be facing the same. We have a national housing crisis, but we also have a growth crisis, I would characterize, in this region when it comes to improving our infrastructure. And as I described earlier, our emergency communications infrastructure is out of date, largely for the facilities that we require today and for the decades to come. So what we could spend any amount of time diving into the design and the level of investment that we're moving ahead with. But I think it's a very complex and intricate conversation about the staging of the growth that we feel is required, the density of technology within that center, and the redundancies that are required are immense as well. So disaster relief capability, the square footage cost is considerable, but it's built to not fail. So I would characterize that we can't afford not to pay for it. And I would say to this council and largely to our community that I feel we take for granted the infrastructure that we require to be prepared for disaster and emergency and the lights that need to run every second of every day. So when it comes to housing versus this project, I think this is a comprehensive conversation that we need to have, but it's not lost on the competing priorities.
I don't know how you feel about that, but I'd be interested insofar as us taking for granted the facilities and infrastructure that we need in order to be adequately prepared for emergencies. And it's not meant to fearmonger, I don't think. And I think that's a fair statement, right? Isn't that kind of the thing? We carry insurance. We probably don't think about it a whole heck of a lot. But then when we need it, gosh, are we ever glad that it's there? Despite any challenges we might have in accessing the necessary payments or whatever the case may be. But just think about it. Not only do we know firsthand from flooding in this community, as an example, how big an issue that can be. We're just 50 years, are we not, past the Great Flood that had people out on the streets, primarily in the Cambridge area, in canoes, because that was the only way to get around. So we're not that far removed in the grand scheme of things from a major natural disaster like that. Then, of course, there was the Great Blackout of 2003. And while, of course, it didn't originate here, it certainly impacted us here. And then you have to think about the new threats that do exist when it comes to what would constitute an emergency. And I think about people who have ill intentions that are breaking into systems, computer systems, et cetera, and trying to override them or whatever that might look like. And there is so much now attached to that space, the Internet of Things, the cloud, whatever you may have, that is keeping our cities functioning. And if somebody gets into that, again, with ill intentions, we can imagine the result. Again, not to fearmonger at all, but I do think that we take it for granted, and we're probably happier when we don't have to think about it, right? Again, I'll just take you back. If you're old enough to remember in these here parts, we still used to have the air raid sirens going off for tests when I was a kid in this town. Our bunker out by Freeport Hospital has become a source of conversation again recently, certainly far more recently than when the bunker was first built. We had some fun talking about that, remember, because I'm going off the top of my head here, but it was less than 30 for sure. People that, I think it might even been less than 20, but people that could go into the bunker in the event of a bombing in our community. And we had some fun kind of just riffing on the idea, who are you picking? Like, who gets to go in the bunker if we're getting bombed? But we've had these sort of things in place in the past. And I think we probably take some comfort in knowing that they're there and then not having to think about their existence. So I am as bothered by a price tag of $173 million for anything as you are. That is a lot of money. But I would be cautious against the ideas of scaling back this proposal now in some way because, and I recognize I'm kind of mixing metaphors here with needs versus wants, but just think of the Cambridge multiplex as one example. Okay? And what a disaster in delays that turned out to be. Oh, it's too close to Kitchener. We can't build it on Conestoga College land and blah, blah, blah. And by the time Cambridge finally got its act together, found a place, got it built or designed and soon to be opened, it's more than double its original estimate, from 50-odd million to more than 100 million today. Right? Think about the plans that were discussed about 15 years ago now in the city of Kitchener when we renovated and expanded the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium in 2012. And we did it for, I forget the price tag off the top of my head, but I remember at the time, one of the options, instead of, I think it was just around 10 million, either a little under or a little over 10 million bucks. But at the time, one of the proposals beyond just the expansion and renovation that was done was an entirely new sports and entertainment facility. And the plan that the Kitchener Rangers brought forward that would make it a nice new hockey arena was in the neighborhood of $65 to $70 million. Forgive me, I am going off the top of my head here, but I think I'm in the ballpark. That's what the Rangers thought it would cost for a new, larger hockey arena. But then the other partners got their fingers into the pie, right? And the entertainment community had an idea for this, and the region had an idea for that. And next thing you know, we were up to $135 million. And everybody said, whoa, we can't possibly take on a $135 million project. Again, in 2010 numbers. At the time, we decided then we'll go with the expansion and renovation, which we did for roughly $10 million. But it was said back in 2010, the idea is we'll do the expansion and renovation now with an eye to doing the new building in the next 10 to 15 years. Well, guess what? Time's up. It's been 15. Where's the new building? Well, I'll tell you where it is. It's on the drawing board, if it's even been drawn up yet, because you can guarantee a building like that is going to cost you $400 million easily before you even put a shovel in the ground. Probably $500 million. Where are we going to get an appetite in this community for something like that? And I know we can argue again, needs an emergency response center with built-in redundancies so that we have the necessary infrastructure for an emergency. That's probably much more of a need than a want, like a nice arena that can seat more people more comfortably, attract concerts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, or a multiplex, great recreational opportunities. Need, want, I don't know. But emergency response, the ability to respond to the emergencies when they happen, because they will, that's a need, is it not? I know it's $173 million. Imagine what it's going to be 5 years from now. Just putting out there for you to consider as we continue watching the budget deliberations move forward. It's Talkback on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. This from Clive via email to Mike at 570news.com. Can you imagine someone taking control of our hospital's computer system? Give the police whatever they need to protect us. You would be shocked what's going on that we don't know about in cybercrime. Yeah, I probably would be, but I do think about that. And earlier I was thinking about the impact on transportation systems, for example, traffic signals, et cetera, all of these things that are connected to online databases, the cloud, whatever you have. I hadn't even thought of healthcare infrastructure. It's a good point, Clive. And I know not everybody feels that way. Oh, just give police everything they need to protect us. But I will just caution again, say no to $173 million today. And I get why you would want to. That's a whole lot of money. But $173 million today turns into God knows what 5 years from now. And then at one point we'll say we do absolutely need this. Back to the phones here on Talkback with Ernie. Good afternoon, Ernie.
Hey, Mikey, how you doing?
I'm good, bud. How are you?
Good. So I understand why you and Tom laugh so much on your segment, because if you're not laughing, you're crying when those reports come out.
Yes, Tom Korski, Wednesday mornings, 11 o'clock. We get a few chuckles out of it.
Yes, definitely love the segment. Just a couple of points, like congrats to Carney and Premier Smith there for getting step one of the deal done. Now we'll see if it's going to come through or not, but
Sure.
I have a couple suggestions here.
Okay.
I feel like as a Canadian, as the leader of running the country here, he either needs to sell all his stock or just make it fully transparent as to what he has.
Yeah,
I don't want to.
I think I'm with you on just like what are you holding on to it for? Just get rid of it. It's the easiest way here.
I don't want it, like, whenever a deal like this is done, I'm like, okay, what's in it for him? Or and Brookfield's involved with so much. You know they're going to be running a lot of this stuff. And I want to put it out of my head that it's because of personal gain or anything like that. You get what I'm saying? As a citizen here. The other point, $15 billion you give away and you don't even read the contract? Mike?
Melanie Jolie with Stellantis.
How do you... Mike, I want her... If she ever works for a bank, please, I'll get her to be my personal advisor for sure. If I can get something written down that she'll just give me some money and then she doesn't read, how come I don't get that kind of luck where we can just get some free money like that and do whatever we want, Mike? Come on.
Ernie, we're just mere working stiffs. That's why.
So, come on. Anyways, Mike, just want to say happy Thursday. Go Ravens, and let's go.
All right, buddy. Thanks. Good to hear from you. A little bit of a football plug there because it is American Thanksgiving. Football underway, runs all day long. You Americans do it right. Hey, we're coming up on the end of our Thursday show, which means, of course, next up is your Friday show. All Request Friday this week. Our theme is winter. Now, I remember saying on Monday when I chose the theme, I'm going out on a limb here because the weather forecasters were already talking about the big storm that was coming. And I said, I'm counting on the weather forecasters because by the time Friday rolls around, even though the calendar doesn't say winter yet, it's going to look like winter out there. Well, here we are. It's looking more like winter. There are not 30 centimeters on the ground yet, but we'll see how the rest of the day progresses. Either way, it's looking and feeling like winter. So make sure your request for All Request Friday is winter themed, okay? And you can do whatever you want with that theme. I just got a request from Maria, and she's really working the theme. But it's fun. Your creativity is what makes All Request Friday fun. So send in your request via email to mike@570news.com. I'll add it to the queue, and the song, your request this week, must be winter themed. Also tomorrow on the show, I'm going to be able to let you know, because we're making the draw at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, our next early bird prize winner in the 570 News Radio Tree of Hope 50/50 raffle in support of Family and Children's Services Foundation here in Waterloo Region. It is 2 tickets to see the Jonas Brothers in Hamilton on December the 14th and $1,000 cash. How do you like that? I bet you could spend it before Christmas. Stats earlier today said the average Canadian is going to spend $943. There's your Christmas shopping money. Anyway, you can get that if you get your tickets for that 570 News Radio Tree of Hope 50/50 raffle in support of Family and Children's Services Foundation today. Get them before 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. You can win the early bird prize, and you can still be in for the jackpot, which, by the way, is a guaranteed $50,000. Pretty cool. Tickets start for as little as $10, and for $10, you get 5 numbers in the draw. Again, you can win the early bird. We'll announce that tomorrow on the show. The draw's being made at 8 tomorrow morning, and you're still in for the big jackpot. So help us out and help us help families through Family and Children's Services of Waterloo Region by purchasing a 50/50 ticket at FACS5050.com. FACS5050.com. And we'll announce the winner of the next early bird prize tomorrow on the show. We're also going to talk about the record that the Cambridge Redhawks are going for, childcare spaces in our region, and how about the kid from our community who was on stage last week with Paul McCartney. All of that coming up on the show tomorrow morning. I'll be here at 9. I hope you'll join me then. My name is Mike Farwell. You are a force for good. Bye for now.